This is the 14th edition of the One Piece Read-Through. My name is Zach.
And my name is Ed.
On today's show, we have Stephen Paul, the translator for One Piece and Weekly Shonen Jump, with us. Hey, Stephen.
Hey, and the translator for all of the material we're talking about today.
Is this the first? No, the second time that's the case.
It's the second time, yeah. Technically, Punk Hazard, I did all of that as well, but it sure felt like a lot going through it week by week.
Yeah, I could imagine. We'll talk about that a little bit more, I'm sure. And we also have the animation director for Rick and Morty and Teen Titans Go with us. We have Bryan Newton. Hey, Bryan.
Hello. Celebration of Dressrosa. It's all over.
It's over, and that's what we're kind of here to celebrate. We were kind of waiting to get a little space between us and Dressrosa. Not to say that this is a lot of space, but we definitely have some now. And we're going to go through this a little bit differently. We don't really feel it necessary to describe to you in detail everything that happened from the beginning to the end in our normal 4-hour diatribes that we tend to do. But I think it's important to go through, major plot points that we found interesting, major themes, major ideas, and our general opinions of the arc now that it is over. I maybe in the distant future, years from now, we'll do a more proper One Piece read-through of Dressrosa.
No. I'm just saying, Zach.
You might.
I'm looking forward at this point.
Look, you may yearn in 2034 to go back to the days of Dressrosa. Oh, remember when we talked about that arc from the year 2013 through the year 2015?
I don't know. I don't think it's going to be that impressive in my mid-40s.
I don't know.
Actually, it probably will be. I'll just be more jaded.
Well, I guess, do you want to start and just kind of talk about your opinions of the arc in general, having reread through it, if you had the chance to reread through it?
Having just reread through it and finished today.
Congratulations.
And pretty much having done it over the last, within the last week. This arc starts out really, really, really strong, I think. I think the whole Coliseum angle really is really strong to start with.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it slows down a little before picking up, then slowing down a little bit again, and then picking up all the way at the end. It's all over the place. I think it goes slow from the end of the Coliseum up until Law's flashback, which point it really it gets up again, and then it
ebbs and flows is what you're trying to say.
It does. And I feel like the end was dragged out a lot, but I still really enjoyed all of it. I feel like it could have been done quicker.
Stephen, what were your general thoughts now that I don't know if you had the chance to go through it all again?
Yeah, actually, I reread all of the English volumes, which 76 just came out this week, which is timely. But like the first 5 up through 75. I reread after we finished Punk Hazard, which of course was several weeks ago.
Myself as well, yeah.
Yeah, and I had been doing revisions on the later material as well for the eventual graphic novel releases and stuff. So I didn't reread the entirety of the arc, especially since so much of it was at the end was fresh in my memory. But it was. I think it was valuable to reread the early parts because it was such a long arc and we were in it for such a long time that the second half as it kind of dragged on was overriding my opinion. I had forgotten a little bit of how exciting it was at the start because it really. It really kind of flies out of the gate in the style of some other very beloved arcs, kind of like Alabasta or Water 7, where you land in this place and it's just like all these details and rich. There's just very lively setting, and there's so many different angles at which he is expanding side plots and things. And then it's just the very slow and methodical process of following each of them and then bringing them back, into a satisfying conclusion that took so long and ended up, causing fatigue.
If I could pinpoint the moment when the arc slows down, it's when Law gets shot in the chest in front of the Coliseum.
I'd put it a little later. I think everything. I mean, Brian, I'll just say this, and then Brian, please go. I think it slows down once, right after Pika reconfigures everything and makes his big debut. I think at that point it really hits a roadblock. But Brian, go ahead. I'll say more later.
Yeah, I think what a lot of people run into, and I'll say for the record, I enjoyed this arc immensely, despite its length, is that I think we all had expectations of this arc that didn't always fully realize at any moment. And a lot of that kind of comes to, we were set up with like a tournament arc for the first time in One Piece. I mean, Davy Back fight is kind of a tournament, but not the same way of like combatants fighting like we're used to in Dragon Ball. And I remember a lot of people complaining about that aspect for people who don't like tournaments in a shonen series. But for me, being introduced into an arc with like all these like great characters like from the tournament, and then Doflamingo and their family, and also a lot of great characters, there's so much setup and promise that I feel like never gets to the level of people's expectations. And when you have a big arc like this, your mind can go places that may not be what Oda intended, and thus you're always kind of left unsatisfied with the result. You're not complaining because you recognize that it's still well made, but you always think in the back of your head like, what could have been? And I think that's what Dressrosa suffers the most from.
I think that's exactly correct. And the thing is,
that also suffers from being 100 chapters long.
Indeed.
I think that's the main flaw, and I think we also this time in a rare instance, asked people for their opinions, since this is such a fresh arc. I think people could kind of don't have to read through it again to have viable opinions here, and I tend to agree. It's definitely too long, and I think a lot of it is, I think Oda just got I don't know how to put this, a little too excited maybe with the prospects of this arc. Like maybe
Oda started too many plot threads, and I'm not sure if he thought about how he was going to wrap them all up.
Yeah, but I think he was more successful in wrapping up these plot threads than he was in say, Fishman Island.
I agree with that.
Indeed, yeah. and the arc is extended because of it, because they do wrap up so well.
Well, this is what we're going to do today. And I'll say my opinions in a second as well, but we're going to go through, there are going to be 10 volumes in this. Of those, by 10 and a chapter. And of those, 5 have been released, 71 through 76. So, 1, 2, 3.
That is
6. I'm losing my mind. It's all of Dressrosa's fault. I'm sorry. No. There's 6 volumes that have been released in English. There are 9 volumes that have been released in Japanese, and we are awaiting the final volume for Dressrosa, which I think is only around half of it is going to be for Dressrosa. Depending on where you consider the cutoff, which is a debatable thing as well. I just want to, echo what everyone else said. I think the beginning of this arc is actually probably some of my favorite chapters in the series. I'd go as far to say. He packs in a ton of stuff. Chapter 700 is one of my favorites. Which I guess, if there's anything you want to say about it, we'll say about it straight at the start. And then you get the introduction of Fujitora. You get all the toys. There's a cramp in their stuffing, I hear, Ed. The Spanish elements.
And just to say, Volume 77 is slated for release February 2nd. Okay,
so it's coming out soon. Hopefully, maybe you're listening to this and it's out already, or maybe all of them are out already. It's I have to say, reading through Volume 76 was also a lot of fun. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Why don't we go one by one? I mean, is there anything you guys want to talk about with concern to the events of 700? I mean, that's a juicy, fun chapter.
Remind me, because I actually don't have.
Oh, okay. No, that's fine.
Volume 70.
70 is the one where we find out all but one of the 7 warlords. We find out kind of where things are going from here. Zoe being the stop after Dressrosa.
That's when Doflamingo's talking to Luffy over the phone, right?
Yes, and he reveals the devil fruit, the flame fruit.
Flame. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's a great setup. I mean, you know
Yeah.
how it's just going to affect Luffy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's not much to say it's a fun setup chapter. 71 this is going to be let's test out this speed up version of our read through here. It starts with them landing in Dressrosa and ends with Doflamingo proclaiming that he is no longer one of the seven, not proclaiming that he is still one of the seven warlords. So finding out
Yeah.
that the whole thing was a scam.
But holy great, how great was this landing? You find it's like an island filled with toy people.
Yeah, no, that was unbelievable. I thought
The setting is really set up well with the exciting sort of passionate land of, it's like the land of romance. It's sort of like a fantasy land basically, with all the living toys
And I mean, we'll talk about it at the end. I don't want to go too anachronistically, but the beginning and the end have a lot of cool little parallels that I think kind of make the beginning pay off a lot more.
Indeed.
Yeah, go ahead.
Look at the introduction of Fujitora. Yeah.
Yeah, great way to kind of, I mean, I wouldn't say he's like necessarily the pivotal, I guess you could say he's kind of the pivotal figure of this arc. I mean, we know that it's going to be Luffy versus Doflamingo, and there are other people who are very important to it, but Fujitora is the one who is going to be, he's the one who's introduced, who is the most important going forward in the story, given his rank in the Marines.
And think about just how many things are introduced right here at the top. You got the toys, who we find out their tragic past a little bit later. We got the fairies, who we find out their tragic past a little bit later. And we got Fujitora. We don't know anything about his past. But
we see reintroduction of Sabo later on.
Well, you're jumping the gun here a little bit. Spoiler alert, guys. Whoa. But in 71 at least, it starts off at a quick breakneck pace, which we talked about a little bit at the beginning of the podcast. I think one of my favorite little elements of this is also, and this lasts through the majority of the arc, are the disguises. Which I think we'd be remiss to not mention.
Frankie's the best.
The
pigtails and the little
the rabbinical.
He looks orthodox.
Yeah.
Orthodox Frankie.
It's the best.
How do you guys feel about the introduction of the fairies and the tontados? Because we really get a lot of that. It's all throughout this volume in particular. We are introduced to their society. They're sort of this put upon set of incredibly powerful and ultimately very consequential
Oda
characters.
must have been watching his 80s cartoons recently, because instantly I saw the Totadas in their culture. I was like, these are the Smurfs.
The Smurfs, yeah. I don't know if we ever mentioned that in the show, but it's painfully obvious.
Yeah, or the what's the other one? The borrowers, is that?
Yeah,
they would take stuff, right? Yeah.
The littles too. That's a really deep cut.
I don't even remember that one. No, it's they're cool, and Greenbit is just this really cool scenery. It's that contrasts with Dressrosa, because we're gonna be, I hate to say, in a city for most of the next couple, the next 10 volumes. So it's in
retrospect, it's kind of disappointing that we didn't get more time on Greenbit just because it's so different.
It's really only in this volume.
Yeah,
it's in 71 through 74. I'd say. Yeah.
Because when the plan falls through.
Once Law runs from the bridge, that's it. What other cool elements? I mean, we'll talk about the characters a little bit more, like Toy Soldier. There's
the Coliseum is just filled with badasses.
Yeah, Ed's first recommendation for this episode was to go by character, and I think we'd be here all night, just with the Coliseum members, because there's a ton we could talk about with all of them.
Yeah, we can start by talking about the ones who become members.
Members of the Alliance. Yeah,
members of the Alliance. I guess the least consequential ones are like Blue Gilly and Idio and Abdullah and Jeet. Those four, those were more in the background all throughout the story. But
Rebecca becomes part of the Alliance, right? I mean, no.
Right, but I really did love the introduction of Don Chinzhao. I think He was probably my favorite character from the Coliseum initially.
I think the anime did a very good job with that all of that fight. And we saw what was the Sabo special too. I mean that was the highlight of that too.
Well, did you guys catch where Oda's pulling that from? The fight between Dan Chinzhou and Luffy is supposed to parallel, or it kind of references Master Roshi versus Son Goku in Dragon Ball.
Oh, that didn't occur to me.
Even Dan Chinzhou's outfit's just like Jackie Chun's.
Oh, you're right.
That is true.
I mean, and it's a traditional outfit, but I think Oda did that intentionally.
Well, I think that fits perfectly into Oda's first tournament arc too, because there's a lot of Dragon Ball kind of vibes that you could get from that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, the first Dragon Ball, like the original, the early part of the series, is tournament after tournament after tournament.
Yeah, even Luffy's like disguise outfit's totally Master
Roshi. Yeah. People, I think Dennis cosplayed as Lucy at New York Comic Con, and he kept getting mistaken for Master Roshi, which is understandable, but
so sad.
I know.
Yeah. We also had the reintroduction of Jesus Burgess as Mr. Happy Store.
I forgot about Mr. Happy Store.
That was amazing. That was fucking amazing.
I mean, you kind of realize that shit's about to go down when they're just bringing all this stuff here, bringing the Blackbeard Pirates in
Cypher Pole Zero, Ages Zero.
Yeah, in this volume. And finding out who they are, like 100 chapters later.
Vice Admiral Maynard, everyone's favorite. Bellamy is alive. There's just like I'm looking at those pages, those spreads that are just every single person fighting in every single block, and I'm like, Jesus, I can't go through all of these people. There's just too much.
I do like the way that they kept Bartolomeo sort of his goals under wraps initially. You know what I mean? Like hiding his fanboyism of Luffy until they get to meet later on.
I love how all of these characters get really fully developed. I mean, that is the one good thing about this being a 100 chapter arc, is that I'm looking at Block B. We know all these characters we know a lot about. Elisabello, Blue Gilly, Tank, Abdullah, G, Bartolomeo.
The one who never comes back, though, is John Ongo. Because we even see, I think...
He was an asshole.
And a Damask. Because we do see Rolling Logan and the Mummy later. Along with... Because I was just reading this. Along with Gats. Like, these are the guys who weren't fighting with Luffy to begin with. So they're going to chip in now. But we never
even the Fighting Bull Moosey comes back.
Yeah.
Although we never found out his ultimate fate, which is depressing. But...
Yeah, Oda's usually better about that with his animal characters.
Did the guy... Did Meadows ever come back? I'm looking at this.
Yes,
I don't remember that guy at all.
He fought at the end with Gats' band against Doflamingo. He was in there.
Fighting Lion? I'm looking at the ones we don't know.
Oh, yeah. We haven't seen the lion. He should have been with Pone Gorilla.
Pone Gorilla was the gorilla who gets transformed in the crowd, right?
Yeah, he was a monkey, like one of those monkeys with symbols.
Yeah.
Did we ever see the giraffe that we kept noting at the beginning when we were doing the podcast?
No, I don't think we did.
I think so.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to that guy. Yeah, so the Coliseum, I guess we could just do this. What are your overall thoughts on the Coliseum as a whole? We kind of touched on this.
King Punch is epic as shit. Yeah.
It's a good point. Yeah.
That was amazing. I loved, I actually liked Rebecca's performance in the Coliseum later on. It really builds up her story.
Well, I should say, what do you think of round one of the Coliseum?
Luffy, the blocks A and B. That's Bartolomeo.
Or the blocks B, C, and D. A was Jesus. He won right away. We never got to even see that one.
The way it came back around with Don Chinzhou versus Luffy, and like the cursing someone to their grandson's generation.
It's very North Korean of him.
What?
No. Thank you, Brian.
I got it.
But yeah, I love that fight between them. It's Don Chinzhou is he's a relic of the old age. He's a relic of another age, I guess is what I mean. But it's showing how Luffy is the new generation. He's gonna rise up, and he has to be strong enough to beat this this really old guy. Even if this old guy was the strongest pirate, in a long time ago.
Yeah.
This is
So he has
one
to be
of,
able to beat this guy.
Yeah.
this was one of Luffy's first instances of taking down kind of an older established pirate within the series, right?
That's true. Yeah, I can't recall that happening.
Yeah, outside of Strong World is the
Well,
only other
I mean,
reference.
Crocodile
Film
is,
set.
he's still pretty young.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, Crocodile's like in his 40s, isn't he? So he's the same age as Doflamingo, I think, right? Around that?
Right. So and Chinjao's got to be in his. Well, he's the same age as Garp, pretty
50s.
much.
He could be like 50s or 60s.
Well, he had dark hair at one point, so I assume he's in his 60s. So
Yeah, that's
he's
true.
like,
Some people gray very early. Anderson Cooper was like 20 or 30 when that happened.
After his head got beaten down and just went gray instantly.
Stephen,
From stress.
any thoughts about the first, the blocks part of the Coliseum?
I distinctly remember, because we were getting so overwhelmed with all these details, and then like pretty much after he kind of introduced, he did a really quick perfunctory exhibition of like, okay, there's these fairies and there's the toys and there's the CP0 and there's the mysterious blind guy. Yeah. And then he just like immediately jumps to the Coliseum. That's where Luffy ends up first, pretty much, and immediately gets sidetracked with that. And at that point, I was like, okay, this is kind of too much. Like, I don't know, that we're supposed to be following up. There's this pressing mission that we're on where we have to bring Caesar to the beach and try to get Doflamingo off of his position, and all of a sudden Oda's trying to throw in a Coliseum, a fighting tournament, and I was just like, I don't know how he's going to make this work. And as we kind of found out, he does make it work, but he makes it work by just slowing everything else down and delaying the the kind of more important part of the story. But I think, that the time that he put into the Coliseum was, it made the Coliseum worth it. Like if he had just kind of glossed over a lot of it in an attempt to keep the plot moving at a quicker level, then we would be looking back at it like, what was the point of, why did he even do it? Like, couldn't he have brought these characters here through a different means? So yeah, I think that actually, having these fairly lengthy blocks and kind of laying the foundation for all of these characters that he will end up carrying over to later developments in the series was he did it well, even if I think we have reason to suspect. I've heard from kind of voices through the grapevine that maybe he kind of, it was perhaps somewhat of a whim that he did the Coliseum thing at all and kind of didn't realize what he was getting himself into. And I think, obviously it's the longest single arc in the series. So, that would say something that, he went kind of outside of the bounds of his usual comfort zone. And I think the Coliseum is probably the biggest part of that.
The funny thing is he was actually doing a pretty good job, Oda, up to this point, at keeping his arcs kind of contained to a year. I think Fishman Island, all things considered, which is hard to still believe at this point, I think was only around a year.
Yeah.
And Punk Hazard was around a year. And then this almost tripled that length, which we'll talk about again at the end. So after, or I should say during...
There's one thing we skipped over that happens.
There's a lot of things we skipped over.
The one important thing is that Sanji falls in love.
That's not important.
Has his first kiss.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
What else is there to say about that? Yeah.
I will say that the whole Violet thing I'm actually a little more disappointed in that than I am Rebecca, but that's for other reasons.
I'm personally a fan of her character, and I think her future in the series is still, there's still a lot of potential with her
For sure,
because she's been set up as the princess, the queen of the future.
Yeah, that I like, and I do enjoy the character. But when Sanji was kidnapped by her and they showed her abilities, I'm like, oh, the whale tears. When is that going to come back into play?
Never.
Yeah, so
that makes no sense in the context of her devil fruit.
Yeah,
They're
that's
cool.
It's
That's all that
complete. It's completely a Japanese pun. It was like a gag thing that he did pretty much, and just never went back to it.
You might have even forgotten about it by now.
No, he's not
that's what Toriyama does. Toriyama
Oh, yeah.
forgets.
I'm sorry. Wrong
Toriyama
guy.
is the one who forgets.
All right, so volume 71 through 72, like we move into what's happening at Greenbit, and Greenbit kind of takes a focus away from the Coliseum for a little bit. And that is because we find out Doflamingo flies over there, confronts Law. It's like, oh, I didn't actually quit the Warlords, which is what he was supposed to do in order to get Caesar back. And what ensues is probably one of the more iconic scenes of this arc, and that is a three-way fight between Law, Doflamingo, and Fujitora. And what did you guys think of this whole Greenbit section? And it eventually goes to the Thousand Sunny and Steven's favorite character. But what did you guys think of this part?
Wow.
Yeah, this you really get a sense for. I think Doflamingo is probably the most intelligent villain in the series at all, like completely.
Yeah, I back that up. That's true.
I think Crocodile had some intelligence to him as well, but
Doflamingo not only had the intelligence, he had like the ruthless cunning plus the connection that we find out during this moment.
Plus, he's strong as hell, as we find out toward the end. It does not hurt to be a powerful person with all of this.
Well, Doflamingo was set up as a very scary figure for a long time ago, and what was great about all this moment was we finally got a solid confirmation of what his devil fruit was. We finally found out like his backstory, or at least pieces of his backstory, which also set up something huge and significant. It's just set up him as a major player, and we know why.
Steven, what did you think of this whole section?
It's great. In fact, this was kind of something that, again, because it was so early on, I kind of glossed over it, in my mind because, then the story moves elsewhere. And, certain other, big fights and big moments later on in the arc kind of override it. But yeah, just in terms of iconic, like the bringing down the meteors and then like the three standing pillars left at the end is super, super cool. And that was a great moment. This is also where we get kind of the green bit, like the look into green bit, and
with the Noland.
Yes, exactly, with Usoland and his connection there.
Tell us the story about the little people.
Yes,
that is so good in retrospect. Like Noland, it's bringing things back in from Skypiea, where it was again an arc people thought at the time there wasn't going to be a lot of lasting influence from, but it keeps coming around back again.
And he does that twice in this arc with connections to Nolan and his country.
What's the second that you're referring to?
During Corazone's flashback.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm. And we'll get to that a little later.
Yeah. No, and that too, that bringing Nolan back in and just kind of out of nowhere, throwing in, a connection to past events in the series that the readers would be familiar with, is one of the things that I think he does a few times throughout this arc that really works to its benefit in terms of kind of maintaining interest in the length. Because in most cases, like when Oda puts together an arc, it's kind of an isolated thing. He kind of closes off the story, and you're in this environment, and stuff's going to happen. New things will happen. You'll see new characters and whatnot, and then eventually he will close that story. He'll reach a conclusion, and then we move on to something else, and we see then he will kind of develop connections to other events in the world and things like that from there. But this is one of the few arcs where I think he, such as the introduction of Sabo, kind of right in the middle of the arc later on.
Guys, again, spoilers, God.
Is excuse me, Mr. Cravat.
Thank you. I forgot about that.
Is bringing in an element that you wouldn't expect to see in it, and all of a sudden it's like it does have more meaning to the overall plot than it had the chapter before, and that's a really clever way to kind of freshen things up and keep and help stave off that, arc fatigue a little bit, because then you just don't know what he could bring in next.
Well,
And,
we'll
we
talk
also
about
get Usopp's faces out of it too.
That's true.
Incredible
I think there's a part of the arc that does not have those, and that's the point where it kind of you kind of feel that fatigue, and then it comes back again, and there's some big surprises that we'll talk about toward the end.
You want to talk about some of the episode titles from the podcast?
Do you want to take a breather from going through the actual material?
Well, one thing I did want to mention is the inclusion of foreshadowing for the royal family in the Coliseum, with talking about Rebecca as the granddaughter of the former king, also Ricky competing in the Coliseum, and the statue of Kyros that no one really understands. That was so confusing when we first went through it. Yeah. Like reading it the first time, the statue of Kyros, like, what the hell is this? What? And we don't find out for so long.
Actually, I wasn't on with you guys at the time, but I remember being intensely curious about the statue of Kyros, that I actually thought it was Ricky, the gladiator, at the time.
Hey, no.
It was a common theory, but
yeah. I think we thought that as well.
Yeah,
I was almost going to say, hey, yeah, and that shows you how much I remember, even though I just read this.
And also, I mean, it mattered. It felt more important to me going through it a second time, because I've really developed an affection for the Kyros and Rebecca storyline.
I still don't really have that as much.
You're stone cold heart.
I have a stone cold heart, apparently. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like it doesn't baffle you like the Senor Pink storyline does for me, does it?
We'll talk about it a little more later.
Okay.
Before we get on with some other stuff here,
just like go through between 700 and 721, some episode titles from the podcast that I like.
Through 721, is that what we're up to?
Well, basically the first two volumes of the arc. Calambre and mi relleno, cramping my stuffing. Robopeus and the sword named Shoeshine.
That's one of my favorites. I love that one.
Trustlemania 16.
That's a good one.
That was Jammers, I think, right?
That was me.
Oh, that was you. Congrats. That's why it was a good one, Stephen. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
That's right.
So I want to note, just to give you an idea of how long this arc went on.
Right.
When it started, I had not yet taken the bar. I left a message in a bottle, because that was the name of it was send out an SOS to the world. The color spread. That's when I left, and I was gone. So what chapter was that? That was chapter 703, and then
in Japan.
Until chapter 718, and we're still only in these first sections of Dressrosa here, and I was gone for like 6 months, and not that much happened. I didn't really have to. I missed a lot of the Coliseum stuff, and I remember a lot of the Don Shinjao stuff was happening while I was in Japan.
I actually think that's a good thing that me and Steve were basically in charge of the wrestling arc.
Appropriate. It was appropriate. It was completely coincidental. I was not like, ooh, I'm going to take the bar and go to Japan at exactly the moment when there's wrestling references to be made. It just worked out that way.
More episode titles. Toilant Green. Very good.
It's people.
Skull Blast Grass, which isn't a great title, but it has one of my favorite episode images of all time.
You're a huge fan of that one, I know.
In the Forest of Region V.
That one is disturbing.
Admiral,
a little bit.
Admiral Magoo with the drawing that Steve made for that.
Yeah, I love that one.
In Japan, always a good choice.
Well, you could check all of these, and Bartolomendish, I think, is the last one worth mentioning. You could check all these out at onepiecePodcast.com/podcast-guide/Dressrosa-guide. Yes, that's a long thing. We'll put a link to it in the description, but enjoy it nonetheless. I think we could probably keep moving on, though, and we already talked about a lot of the Don Shinjao stuff, so I think we could move on. That's kind of the bulk, I think, of volume, was it 72?
But we also get the Luffy defeating a giant, like, briefly.
Right.
in the Coliseum. It's like that's how strong. That's where Luffy's powers are at.
And you got to move quicker than this. We got to
I
get
know.
through all of
I'm
Dressrosa.
just flipping through.
No, I know you got to flip through quicker, but I mean, you also we learn. We talked a little bit about the Tontada. You get and things start really coming together as the Tontadas and with Usopp and Robin start heading toward Dressrosa. Everything starts. The action is clearly moving away from Greenbit, little by little. We also have the what is it? The crew, the ship defense team. I don't know what you want to call them, of Brook, Momo.
The future twirly hat pirates.
Well, excluding the twirly hat.
Right.
Even though he doesn't have a hat. But what do you guys think of all that? I'm going to leave that to Steven, because I think this might have been probably one of the highlights of the arc for you.
Oh yeah, man. The Jola on the ship was just incredible. And yeah, when I saw that chapter, I almost died because it was so weird, and I think she was my favorite of the Doflamingo cretins, I guess you'd call them, because they're just so over the top, and
it's artastic.
Yeah, artastic. I had fun with that, and just really, really creative use. It's like a lot of other things. It's kind of one of those, like, I wish Oda had done it a little more, or if he had found a way to have her do that to more of the Straw Hats, just to see what would happen. But on the other hand, like, if he had, then maybe it would have gotten real old real quick. But that was really fun. And another big element of this volume at the end, kind of after a lot of or in between, I guess, before Rebecca goes to do her thing, is we kind of get the laying down the foundation for her family story, which is like the flashback of her childhood with the toy soldier, and kind of establishing her connection to that character, which at this point is still very mysterious.
We know from his discussions with, I think, Frankie, that he is leading the Tontada army against Doflamingo, and they chose this day because of the fact that Doflamingo.
This day.
Why on this day? I know. Why is this day different from all other days?
No, that's not where I was going. That's nights. Why is this night different from all other nights?
No, but they decided to go on this day because Doflamingo, he claimed to abdicate, but he took it back. There's take backsies on this one, and they just, today is the day because of that.
We also, I think that covers volume 72 pretty well. Just looking through it, I skimmed through it again. The Chinjiao stuff is just so damn cool in the manga too.
Yeah. And we begin to get the sort of the inklings of the darkness behind Dressrosa with like the.
I want to save the whole Riku stuff for when we have the flashback with this toy soldier. I think that's probably a good time to go through all of that.
Oh, and we also get the Bartolomeo. His fanboyness is unveiled at the end of volume 72, which is just such a great reveal for the
and we all I think instantaneous were like, Greg. That's Greg. That's who that has to be.
Yeah.
No other option.
It was great that we got him to pose for that picture a few weeks ago.
Which one?
The one that looks like Bartolomeo's ship with the.
No, that was we took that picture when I was in Japan, which happened before the Bartolomeo reveal. You didn't know that? No, he did not take that picture then. That was in July 2013. So God. Again, this is a perfect idea to get the context. So it was
synergy.
Yeah, the chapter that had come out was actually like maybe a couple chapters before that Bartolomeo reveal. It's not like we released that. Those are videos we have saved up for, special features and stuff. So those just exist, and so we could prove to you that those were filmed when I was over there, because I'm conversing with Greg in Japan. It's clearly not taken today. And then at the very end of Dressrosa, there he goes. Greg has his own ship. It's kind of nuts. But the thing is, his I think during Hokotate, his house was kind of shown, his apartment was shown, so it's very likely that he has seen the inside and understand and based it off of it. Or it's just a crazy coincidence, which I highly doubt. Anyway, so the La Resistance is on, as you mentioned, and Toy Soldier's leading that. I felt like that lasted forever. Personally, I thought that's kind of the first thing that felt like, kind of lagging on and on and on. Maybe that's also the anime kind of did that to me a little bit.
I think so.
I actually think a part of that comes from Oda having to reiterate certain ideas, like the Tatatas are against Doflamingo. The Doflamingo is a really bad king. Toy Soldier has to repeat the same thing the Tantata said just a little while ago. That things like that make arcs or make ideas and arcs drag out longer because it's not giving you new information.
No, and I think readers were probably getting confused as to what the hell was happening. Which is reasonable, especially if you're not marathon reading it and you're weekly reading it, and you're not us on the One Piece podcast reading it every week and talking about it.
People forget.
Yeah, and trust, we've had people on the podcast, and this is no insult to them, but that don't read as carefully as us. So they're like, who's this guy? What's going on here? And you know what? There are so many freaking characters and things happening in Dressrosa, so that's completely understandable to take a breather and be like, this is what's happening.
Yeah. It's a sign just kind of the limits of the storytelling medium that once you, it's sort of like like road construction or something like that. It's like once you get to a certain level of complexity where it demands a certain level of concentration to remember where everything is, it's going to drastically slow everything down because he kind of has to keep certain elements fresh for the reader. It's not like watching a single movie where you can introduce a detail once and expect people to remember it for the length of the movie.
And people still don't remember it for the length of the movie.
But it's more like, having like a full season of TV where it's like, even on HBO shows that are super complicated, they have that little reel at the start of the episode where it's like, this is what happened in the last,
previously on Lost.
Exactly.
Or whatever,
exactly.
Like Battlestar Galactica, whatever you want it to be.
Right.
I'm stuck in 2004. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And it's just that, Oda, he doesn't really have that type of ability to kind of have a specially assigned space to remind you of certain things before he continues on. He's just got to he's got to organically throw these elements back in so that you're staying focused on where we are in the story, and that's really hard to do when you only have 17 pages or 19 pages or 15 pages per week. And plus breaks. So yeah, it's that sort of thing. Like that's where you really start to see, I think, the scale of Dressrosa start to kind of buckle under its own weight a little bit. It's just the inability to tell it as quickly as he probably wants to.
The weight of Pika.
That actually reminds me of something else that kind of marathoning through it. I realized certain things. One of them, as we come to kind of the climax of this first part here with that ends with Law and Doflamingo on the bridge, I realize how little we've actually been with Law. It's only been, I think, 2 days in the timeline here up until this point. And not just that, but even as readers, we've only been with him for a short time as well. And I think reading week to week, we already had been with Law as a character for a few years in that alliance. But when you're reading, marathoning through it, and I read Punk Hazard straight through Dressrosa, I remember thinking like, maybe we were trusting him a little. I mean, it ended up paying off, but maybe we were trusting him a little too much even. It's like you could, I think as a marathon reader, a lot of that, like, will he, won't he, what is he doing? Is he actually using them? Like, what's his motivation? I think all of that kind of stuff is a lot more prescient when you're reading through it and marathoning it, volume through volume through volume. And there's just so much in this specific volume 73, which I think is probably one of my favorites in this arc. There's a lot of big setup here that as a marathon reader pays off much quicker. I think this is the volume where Fujitora even mentions, Sakazuki's heading toward Marijoa now from Navy headquarters. He'll be there in a day. And you see that pay off at the end of the arc. Because that's only a day later.
What's this business about you resigning and stuff like that?
Yeah, like there's a lot of little setup things that happened here, and that's because once we hit the birdcage part, which is where I'm gonna say things really stall,
Yeah.
I think once you hit that, also nothing to the outside world could happen. So Oda may have had that in mind when Volume 73 and I think parts and 74 as well, is he gets a lot out of the way here. And we get that whole part. Sanji kind of shows himself with Doflamingo, and we get this clash between that crew, Law and Doflamingo. What did you guys think about this part?
This is the kind of infamous Sanji intercepts Doflamingo scene on the bridge.
That's
I
badass.
believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a great moment, and I remember. Yeah, as with every case, when Oda ends like a chapter with a dramatic image like that of Sanji jumping in to stop Doflamingo, you temporarily get all the fans to be like, oh my god, is Sanji gonna beat? How's Sanji gonna fight Doflamingo? And it's like, no, it's just a misdirect. It's it's a bit of plot to kind of maneuver things the way that Oda likes. But it was a great moment for Sanji, and probably his best in this arc, because
I'm going to say his best since the time skip.
Yeah. I'd say so.
Sure.
Not a lot of competition there for Sanji.
No. Yeah, it's also a great moment because for people who get obsessed about like, oh, Zoro's stronger than Sanji, stronger than blah blah blah. It's just like, this is a thing that reminds people, hey, this is a world where these are all like potential fighters and capable people. Like, they still have to stand up for each other, and like Doflamingo's a monster, but Sanji's like, I don't care, he's threatening my crew.
Yeah, no, yeah. I think Sanji in this arc rectified himself tremendously. As we are recording this, we don't know if that will be the case in the next arc, but in this one, I think Sanji, even in his more, what do you want to call it, perverted moments, I think was funnier. I think it was handled better. Even in the more humorous situations, and in the less humorous situations, as Sanji leads the Twirly Hat Pirates out, which we'll talk about a little more in a second. I think he does. I think he shows how capable he is, which is something we sorely needed after he was kind of used as a plot device in Fishman Island, which we talked about at length a few months ago now. So I think the major thing to happen is we get a little history with the Tontatas, and we get a little history with the Riku family. The Riku family history is slightly longer.
You really get to see the despair of how evil Doflamingo is, and what he's forced people to do, and what he can force people to do.
Oh, totally. This was just a big bunch of tragedies.
I actually really like how this was handled.
Like the specifically the one scene when King Riku is being puppeted by Doflamingo, and he's asking for his subjects to kill him. Yeah, I nearly lost it when I read that.
Yeah, I think it was one of the better done sections here. Yeah.
And just to say that whole flashback begins because everyone's been taken to the fake medical room, and they're sitting on the trash pile after they've been dropped down through before they all get turned into toys.
Yeah, and I remember at the time being like, what is happening? And you're kind of, at this point, you kind of get it, but you're like trying to piece together how it works, and you don't know about Sugar and Treble yet, and you're like...
You don't know about Kyros really either.
Oh, that's also accurate.
Yeah, it's really
which is actually important, because it's like, your ignorance, the way... I'm not sure if Oda intended it to write this way,
I think probably.
You get the feeling that, like, you're missing something here, like there's a whole part of the story that you're not being told, and it's like it is in the story with everyone who's been made to forget about Kyros because he's been turned into a toy.
Well, I mean, if anything that this arc does very well, especially in the first, I'd say I think the first half is also much better because of the whole toy thing, and once that cat's out of the bag, or
free for all,
or in this case, Gorilla's out of the toy, it kind of just turns into it kind of gets chaotic. But in a way, in the storytelling as well, which isn't as preferable.
All those chapters are skipping around.
Yeah, there's a lot. It's especially what Ed does not like in storytelling. And I think, but up until that,
I'll say that's easier to deal with in a marathon.
Yeah, and I think we're going to be talking about these first 4 volumes a lot longer than we're going to be or these first 5 volumes a lot longer than we're going to be talking about the following ones, because
there's a lot of fight tactics.
There's a lot in the later ones. In this one here, though, there's like it's good plot development. I really like this whole I'm going to say first half of Dressrosa. I think they set up things very well. And the cool thing about it is Ed's right. There's something missing the whole time. And so they not only take the memories from the people of Dressrosa, it's kind of like they're presenting the memories half finished to you. It's kind of cool in retrospect when you think about it. So I guess beyond that, we could move on to the.
Oh, there is explanation. I mean, the history from the Tontadas, we should say, like it goes back 1,000 years, which is even longer than the Void Century, and
I'm sure that'll be important in the future at some point. We're not quite sure completely. We also learn in this arc. This arc is important if also in the long term stuff and setting up the big picture stuff, which we're kind of glossing over. But it's kind of some of my favorite stuff, and Brian, I know it's some of your favorite stuff as well.
Oh yeah.
But we learn kind of Dressrosa's place in history, Doflamingo's place as a celestial dragon, which we'll talk a little bit more about a little later. We learn about how that system worked, how kings were brought, the 20 kings back to Marijoa.
19 kings.
19, not including the Nefertaris. All that stuff is super interesting. We also get characters like Dellinger. I mean, that's big picture stuff right there. Sorry, I just happened to have my page open to like the introduction of.
And I didn't realize this happened so early either, but they do reveal that the soldier is Rebecca's actual father about halfway through 73.
Those were all. That was a super obvious reveal, I thought, though, at the time.
But they don't say who he is.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it becomes pretty obvious pretty quickly that the Kiro statue was Toy Soldier. I mean, like, the more you read, you're like, oh, yeah, no, that's... Or, like, once you read it, it's like, oh, that's not surprising.
That's partially why it was so, like, confusing at the very start of the Coliseum as to who's the Kyros. Why did you think Ricky would be Kyros? Is because there's so many elements that he's still adding. But once you get to this point, it's like, okay, he's kind of stopped adding to the pool, and you're piecing, you're connecting these dots, but Kyros is the one that still isn't connected to anything. And it's like, okay, well, he must be this toy soldier because we know people are turned into soldiers, so on and so forth. And eventually it becomes obvious that it can't be anything else.
So things kind of come to a head here, and we get to the point where Ed believes the arc drops off, and that is when Doflamingo ends up shooting Law. And the whole confrontation, especially in the anime, really cool fight. It's a really well done fight. The end, though, a little more controversial. I think we called this one "He Shot the Law," and the Law did end up winning. So should have known.
Well, Law takes quite a few bullets, although he does manage to switch out when he gets shot at the second time.
Yeah,
much later on.
It's I don't really.
No, I think the poetic justice of him getting shot with lead bullets is overcomes the kind of bullshit nature of it.
Well, I forgot who we were talking to, but kind of saying that once guns really don't mean anything in the present day, at least.
Especially not for these super strong.
You mean in One Piece present day, not in our present day.
No, that I mean, people would have you believe that, but no, you're right. In One Piece, the NRA could have the guns don't kill people, guns don't kill anyone.
Accurate.
Yeah. They'd be they're pretty. Yeah, I'm not even going to touch that subject. Anyway, so we get all that, and then things really. This I think is like some of the most badass 2 chapters, because you have Zoro and Kinemon trying to take on Fujitora. Big Mom showing up out of nowhere. That was one of the biggest
fucking
and best
amazing
reveals.
For no reason.
Yeah. For no reason.
That I think I remember that manga recap, and I think that was probably one of the most impressive chapters. We were just like,
I also love that Caesar is like, you gotta hide me, I stole a bunch of her money.
Oh, we called that we called that chapter "Ship Just Got Real," which is appropriate. Yeah. And the thing is, the one after that is when Mr. Cravat gets introduced.
Yeah.
It's like this was the stuff.
That was much more obvious than even Kira's.
Which is funny, since we thought things were kind of slowing down, and who cares anymore at this point, and then things just get crazier. Like the stakes get upped tremendously.
Actually, the Coliseum is the place where the action stays up the most through the middle part of this arc, I think.
Accurate.
Once everything gets broken in the Coliseum, that's when things really get chaotic.
Well, Luffy leaving the Coliseum, though, definitely deflates the Coliseum stuff a little, but the fact that it's Mr. Cravat coming in, I think, kind of raised those stakes again. And if Luffy leaving does give me one of my favorite little gags, and that's the costumes, the koi fish, the cat,
and the frog.
And the frog, which I wish
Madam,
that
I'm
lasted
offended.
longer.
That might be my favorite line from this entire arc of yours, Stephen. Madam, I'm offended.
Yes, yeah.
I'm trying to remember the context. I gotta look at that.
No, when Viola's criticizing the costumes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, that was funny.
Offended frog, yeah.
Of course. No, those make it for me. I mean, what did you guys, since we kind of lost...
Luffy snot face because he was, like at this point, Sabo's Mr. Cravat has introduced himself to Luffy.
Well, yeah, let's talk about what did you guys think of that that reveal?
Luffy's face.
And the Luffy face.
Could feel it.
It was. There's only 2 moments in my life where I've gotten up and ran around the house or around my office because of One Piece. It was Ace revealed to be Gold Roger's son, and Sabo's reintroduction into the series. Yeah.
Chapter 550, I think, was the other one you're talking about.
That is the one.
It's crazy I can remember the number.
It's kind of a milestone.
I think that one's significant. It's like it could potentially be the middle of the series.
Well, to give you an idea, I think our first manga recap was 544, so I think it was a couple weeks into us starting is when that got revealed. No, that was a big time for One Piece. This was as well. And then, to give you an idea, just like the shift, we head straight into Senor Pink right after that.
Senor. But Frankie being an awesome guy.
Well, I love the new hairstyle, don't get me wrong.
I don't know, I was able to take the Senor Pink storyline much less seriously upon reread, and it made it funny.
So
see, now you're getting it.
But there's also like things slowing us down where we get the Doflamingo family tree is what I'm going to call it. You get a lot of explanation, but then there's also stuff like the underground port, which I think is there's some really cool stuff that happens down there as well. And the second round, the Block D stuff is going on, which we've kind of talked about a little bit at the same time as well. I forgot Block D went so deep into the arc.
Yeah, that was kind of weak.
The Block D, I think Oda's like, I gotta get this done quickly. Let me just make Cavendish fall asleep and kill everyone.
Yeah, despite the fact Block D is longer than the previous 2 arcs. I mean, blocks.
Previous 3, really. I mean, Block A was just sort of over.
Yeah. Yeah, if you notice, they all get progressively longer.
No, Block D is just kind of there, though. It kind of happens briefly every so often.
But that's the thing is, briefly every so often is like, 3 or 4 pages of every chapter, which is 3 or 4 fewer pages to move the rest of the story forward.
Right.
Accurate, yeah.
And it also kind of makes sense that it would take the longest because clearly the weakest people are in Block D. Like Cavendish and Rebecca.
That's true, too. They're just whittling away at each other. There's no one like Don Chinchao.
He probably should have switched the order of that or something, because it's like the stakes are as low as possible in Block D. I just kind of didn't care about the Coliseum. And then what he does is, once the finals started, he really makes you care. There's with Sabo and with, Mr. Cravat. We're not up to that yet. And Jesus and Diamante and Rebecca and Bartolomeo. It gets a lot more interesting, and we'll talk about that in a second.
God, but I do love Luffy's face when Sabo is revealed to him. Not to us.
We're on the next volume now, Ed.
That I would say yes, as far as like pinpointing the point where the arc kind of takes a turn into the swamp. Maybe not necessarily exactly when Law gets shot, but after that short little, 2 chapters or so where everything is going crazy. And then, like you said, the most of the next volume covers Block D in the Coliseum, and the stuff that they're also covering at, meanwhile is like the toy factory, trying to...
That was where the action really was, yeah.
Trying to sneak through there. But the thing is, like, that type of stuff is not, it's not kind of inherently enticing. It's just kind of moving pieces on a board. Like
Luffy specifically and company are trying to run to where Doflamingo is. It took them this entire volume.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of maneuvering.
But Brian, it took them this entire volume, and then they get thrown back and take another 2 volumes or something.
That's the other issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because with all of the different kind of moving pieces in the arc and the elaborate setup of okay, we have to undo the curse. That will cause a shift in the island and the arc as a whole, and then you have to go about like actually beating the bad guys. Like it creates this whole series of events that have to happen in order, and you kind of. A lot of that stuff is stuff that will happen, and you're not necessarily getting new details as a result.
And what's great about it is that it's setting up this anticipation, and then when the things happen that are going to happen, Oda always adds his twist, and they make them happen in very unexpected ways, like the curse of the toys being broken.
True.
Yeah, and that's true as well. We also get in the middle of, what is this volume? I forget what volume I'm in. I think 74. I'm doing the digital one, so when I'm in it, I'm in it. I don't know what the hell's happening. And we get the confrontation quote unquote between Fujitora and Doflamingo, where we kind of learn Fujitora's true intention, which I thought was probably one of the cooler parts of this kind of more middling volume. Where you find out he wants to eradicate the 7 warlords, which is, I think, a super crucial part of this arc, especially when we get further away from things and see the repercussions. I
think he handled like Fujitora's mindset really well, because at the time we were a little surprised. We were kind of like, okay, what's Fujitora playing that? Like, I mean, obviously he has this, he states here that he has this philosophy that he holds kind of dear to himself about how he thinks the world can be improved, but how does it like play into his actual actions here? Because it's like he's kind of helping Doflamingo, or he's not like interfering with Doflamingo. And I think in retrospect, when you see his whole character arc over by the end of Dressrosa, it makes a lot more sense, and I think he actually handled that pretty well throughout the story, because he is kind of walking a thin line as far as his actions and how it affects the rest of the arc playing out.
And it for him as a character, I think things worked out kind of the best for him as possible. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen next for him in the story, but as far as we could tell, he got his way completely.
Yeah, I think Fujitora is Oda's way of communicating an idea about where the series is going. For example, I think Doflamingo will be the last warlord opponent for Luffy, because now he's on the bigger, better things like taking down emperors.
I mean, who would even be left for him? As no
one. Everyone else is kind of an ally / like not really a threat for him,
right?
Except maybe
I don't know, but Buggy's gonna be pretty pissed off.
There's only one, and that's the new one.
That's the new one.
Yeah.
Who's kind of a joke.
Yeah, let's be honest. Yeah, no. He might be super powerful, or he's likely super powerful,
but he's stupid.
But he's stupid, and who knows in comparison to Luffy, his ability. We don't know that yet. So I guess the next thing to talk about is the finals in the Coliseum, which are cool. I think is all I really could say about it, and it happens in the background from, I think, through volume 75.
Yeah.
And I mean, do you guys have thoughts on just the final match? It's pretty quick if you just read just that part.
It's a real indication of how strong Sabo is, though. I mean, that's really what it's a demonstration of. Like, he's able to dispatch, like, he destroys the Coliseum, he dispatches Burgess pretty easily,
and that's prior to him winning.
Yeah, and he wins he eats the fruit, and like, it was so easy for him to do that. And like, I also find it interesting that all of his attacks are dragon based. Like, he's a dragon's claw, but he's also the right hand of dragon. Come on.
Yeah, totally.
Love it. It's symmetry.
Of course, that also, the final of the tournament kind of, I want to say it revealed some cracks in Doflamingo's image of a super bad, at least among us. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
if
you mean
if
like
Japanese
the cracks,
readers,
like the cracks in the arena that Sabo made.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's where it's kind of like, wait a second, like why would they actually put it was that easy? He just jumped over there and got it, and now
And this is the guy who has said a lot of people have underestimated the Straw Hats. Well, I'm not going to do that.
Well, the other thing is, it's not even that he underestimated the Straw Hats. It just might go to show how strong Sabo is and how capable Sabo is.
But Sabo was a wild card. Doflamingo had no clue about the connection.
How the hell would he have known that? Luffy didn't know that. Luffy thought he was dead.
Come on. Sabo didn't even know it.
That's also
that's true.
that is an issue. I'll talk about at the end. So I have very different opinions about that.
But even if it wasn't Sabo, even if it was still Luffy, I mean, he still would have done the same thing. He still would have won and gotten the fruit. So it doesn't, change the fundamental issue.
This is what Doflamingo didn't predict. He didn't predict, even if Luffy were in there, Bartolomeo and Rebecca, the other two people, would have been on his side. How the hell would Doflamingo have known either of them would have won, and then either of them would have been on Luffy's side?
But now we're actually assuming Luffy could have beat Jesus Burgess.
And that's another thing. We don't know if that even would have been possible. Diamante, I'm not worried about. I think he could have flicked him out of the way. But Burgess, I don't know.
If Luffy had decided to go on full on, Gear 4 like he does later on, I think he probably would have done it.
Maybe.
And that way we are shown him training with Rayleigh for this particular
instance
event. Yeah, exactly.
Eventuality.
Yeah. I think he could have handled Jesus, but I think it would have been a big enough fight that Doflamingo would have been next to impossible afterward.
Not many people can handle Jesus. Okay. So meanwhile, we get a lot of the stuff coming into place. We got kind of like the pieces going, where they need to go. We get a cool little gag with Kitamon dressed up as Doflamingo. You get the part where Gladius kind of comes in and shows his abilities.
But at that point, that's where when Gladius sees, and this is after Pika has interrupted like Zoro, and Luffy has gone up to the top outside of the suits room, and this is right before everyone gets turned back from being toys. So I think it's
you get an introduction, I think, for all the executives, and a little bit here. Treble, Diamante, and Pika get a little bit of an introduction here for all of them. We talked about steak and salad a lot at this point in the story.
Yeah, that's pretty much the discussion.
And I think, Ed, we win that discussion over Steve. I think it was us. I think Steve was the one arguing that it doesn't affect Usopp at all. He's just being a coward.
No, that's the effect of memory loss. That's the effect of, what are you even fighting for? Why are you here if you can't remember why?
For those who don't remember, steak and salad is a meal where you don't remember, when you have steak and salad and you don't remember the steak. The same as having a meal with the steak. And no, it isn't. It's just you're eating salad. All you remember is the salad. It's different. Sorry.
All those experiences are gone. Like when Robin gets turned into a toy. That's actually one of the more powerful moments in the series.
I think so. Well,
me too. I agree. Usopp's turn here was great.
And then when he's still, even though he doesn't remember it, he's like, it takes him a while. But he turns back. He's like, I'm not a hero. I'm Usopp. But I'm going to throw everything I can at him. And I think we talked about how it kind of happens and we don't see it. And I think that's fantastic.
And he's like, you better build me a statue when I'm dead.
And while that's all going on, that's true. And while that's all going on, we have the Kyros flashback because we learn what happened in the Toy Soldier Kyros. This is probably of the flashbacks, and we get a lot of them. This is probably my second favorite.
I back that up. This is a really good one.
It doesn't. The laws.
It has grandpa time. That's all I have to say.
Laws is so much more important to the world at large. But I love this story of Kyros being this street tough kid who killed two guys and is so emotionally wounded by it and can't forgive himself or think of himself as a good person that it's taken him, he's still not cool with it until he's probably not even cool with it at the end of the arc. He's not really good with his trauma yet at that point. And I just love the quest of him trying to purge himself of his sin of killing people.
Yeah, his hands being dirty.
Is intense, and this man has so much self-hatred that he's trying to reconcile with himself. He's trying to be okay with himself, and he's working that out with his daughter. So
Yeah, but also think of the grief he experienced when he does
God.
lose his wife, Scarlet,
God.
ultimately. And when he's holding her in his hands and can't feel the life draining from his body because he's already been turned into a toy.
Right. She doesn't know who he is.
Yeah,
That's the worst. Yeah.
all that would, and she dies that way. It's not like she ever goes, "Oh, my husband," back in the day. No, she's gone forever.
It's beyond, because like the one thing, as mortal beings that we have is that at least people will remember us for a little while.
Remember me.
and and he does not get that with the person he loved. It's incredibly
really
devastating. And
Bender's worst nightmare. They build the statue and they still forgot him.
and the thing is, and we talked a little bit about the Kiro story and how effective it might be, and this flashback in particular affected the hell out of me. This was brutal, but at the same time, because this arc is so long and drawn out, it steals from the impact that this has, to such a degree that you're kind of rolling your eyes at it at the end. Whereas if you read it all kind of in a row, it'd be fantastic. It would be great. It would be one of Oda's better character studies, but it's not because of the pacing, and it's unfortunate. Even marathoning through it, because there's like many volumes between this point and the point where it gets resolved. Right. But
it does make Diamante that much more of an evil guy, because like that was his entire character during their final fight. Of,
let's be honest,
hey, remember that time I killed your wife? That was awesome.
Diamante only has Steven Tyler and this stupid thing. And
he also has facial expressions.
He's got that, yes.
Yeah. I almost think Dressrosa benefits from cutting the arc in half. Like, maybe at this point. Like, read the first half, be satisfied, and then come back later and then read the rest of it when you've sat with it for a while.
And the end of this volume is speaking of facial expressions.
Oh my
God. Giant Usopp face with sugar. Like, and all the toys get turned back, and that's the end of this volume. So maybe that would be a good place to divide it.
It is a truly terrifying image, the Usopp face, and I forget it because we're like, oh, that was ridiculous and hilarious, but it actually is also terrifying. I think he does a good job at portraying it as funny and terrifying. This should have been my Halloween costume.
I can twist your eyes, yeah.
If I could have figured out how to do it. Just the mask, I think, would have worked fine. They should sell that in Japan. So that's volume 74. And 75, I think, for me, is when things kind of start dropping off.
Although I did find volume 75 to be a funny chapter, a funny volume. I remember myself like being amused at a lot of the things in it. But
Usopp has a lot of great gags.
Yeah, and
go ahead, Brian.
So, sorry, I was just going to say, I'll be an outliner. I actually like 75 onward. 74 got slow for me, but I'll be a contrarian.
Okay, that's fine. You could be a contrarian. I think probably the best part of this, and I remember doing the manga recap for this as well, is when Kuros confronts, after, the 10 years, Doflamingo in the same way and cuts his head off. But no, it's not his head. It's a puppet.
Yeah.
And during all that, we also get the God Usopp stuff, which is probably a very pivotal moment in the series there.
Oh, even right before that, you get Lord Pika rearranging the island, showing up as a giant monolith of a man with his devil fruit ability. I think that's fucking phenomenal.
Was that after or before?
It's just after.
Just after?
Yeah.
And you get the bird cage, which kill me now, please.
Yeah.
I think just mentioning bird cage makes me angry. I think that as a plot element.
Isn't that the purpose of the technique, though?
I think
it fills you with hope and despair, and like please kill me now.
When he did that, I didn't think he was talking to the reader. I mean,
Jack, did you want to go through any listener contributions at this point? I mean,
we'll do them at the end. We'll do a piece together segment ish kind of thing.
Well, in that case, here's some more episode titles from the podcast. Can I treble you for some sugar?
We did a lot of those. Treble and Toyland.
Yeah, I've got Soul, but I'm not a soldier. Grandpa Time, Off with His Thread.
That's good.
That's where we are right now. Because the man behind the cravat is obviously coming up.
Yeah, that's around where we are now. The man behind the cravat, and we find out Sabo, Koala, and Koala was actually, we didn't even mention her. That was probably one of the biggest surprises of that too.
It was a
that
nice
she
little
came back.
surprise.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not surprising that she would end up with the Revolutionary Army, but it's like she's like
I was surprised by that.
I don't know, it makes sense to me.
I really like that Oda did that with her.
I like her
character.
role as like Sabo's big sister / girlfriend.
Well,
Yeah,
when we did
that's
Fishman,
cool.
when we did Fishman Island, that flashback is, especially Jinbei's flashback, is probably one of the highlights for me. I love the Fisher Tiger story. We talked a lot about this. So to see Koala come back in that way, and she kind of was like the Franz Ferdinand of that whole incident. With, for lack of a better term, I'm trying to think of the kind of the ignition to set off that whole thing. It's nice to see her playing an important role in the series. So Pika rearranges the island, blah blah blah. And we get the star system. God, come on, just the anime episode for that, Steven. I know you don't watch the anime, but they spent like 15 minutes going through each person and then showing the amount of stars. Boom, 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 for whoever it was. It was torture.
Most of the episode.
Oh, well, I think I think it took around the time we've been going through Dressrosa just now.
Yeah, that's the thing is like this too, like, the kind of transition of, okay, now the birdcage is there, Pika is kind of unveiled and doing his thing. Like that's kind of the point where you realize, like, oh, we've gone through,
Not even close to the end.
No.
close. Yeah, we've gone through close to 5 volumes here. It's, it's what would normally be an arc's worth of stuff, and we've had, new characters and new developments that entire time, but almost none of it has been the actual bad guys. Like, it's all been these Coliseum figures and kind of maneuvering people into place, and now we actually have to do the business of fighting them, and
it gets painful a little bit.
Yeah, I think one of the issues is that, when you're learning about these Coliseum characters, like, they're even though he kind of has to take the same amount of time to develop each of them and kind of give them their characteristics and kind of convince you why you should care about them one way or another, is there's a lot of there's some unpredictability of them. Some of them are kind of sympathetic characters or friendly characters who we'll see at the end of the arc kind of continue that relationship. Some of them are not. Some of them are more antagonistic. Some of them are just weird. But with the Doflamingo family, you already know what what their role is in the story. Is they're going to be the roadblocks that you have to get over, and sure. I just don't think that he made them individually quite as interesting. Everyone's going to have their favorites of which they like more than others.
Which are your favorites? I'm curious. No.
Man, like, I mean, that's one of the problems is that my favorite was Giola, and she got knocked out like before anyone else.
Giola's cool.
She does come back though. She does.
That's cool, broad.
Yeah. And I don't know. It's just like I guess maybe it's just because like the main guys, the supreme officers never really did it for me. I mean, Diamante is kind of fun in like a blowhard kind of way, but
Pika's only fun because of his voice.
But also the way he gets
I enjoy his size.
I mean, and Pika's cool. Just
I think we
to
can all
look
agree
at.
the Treble's the worst.
Yeah. he was really annoying. I mean, Lao Ji was funny, but again, kind of a more of a minor guy. And then some of the characters like Gladius. Like, does anyone give a shit about Gladius? No. Really?
It's their anime.
Yeah,
he's Mr. Anime. I'm looking at the cover of volume, what is this, 77? Yeah. Because it shows all of them on the front, so it's easy. And the only one I really love out of these is Baby 5, who, as we know, her track in this arc is kind of different than everyone else's. When I say I mean she has cool powers, and I actually like her very short backstory. I think it's the
opposite of Senor Pink's backstory.
Yeah. I think, and she's an interesting character in how she was portrayed back in Punk Hazard when we saw her. Not when she was in Punk Hazard, but when we saw her on Dressrosa when we were in Punk Hazard. Not to make that too confusing. I think of the executive officers, I have to say, I think Pika was the coolest, and not because of his personality, which was kind of stupid.
Oh, he didn't have a personality.
Exactly. But he has probably one of the cooler powers, and one of the funnier quirks to go along with that power. And I think all the stuff that Oda drew for him, and especially just the opportunity that was for Zoro, which we'll talk about a little bit later, I think was worth it.
Indeed.
But of the Treble and Diamante, I don't give a shit about. God.
I don't know. I love the ridiculousness of Diamante. He's good in a funny way. I couldn't stand Treble at all.
And we've been talking a lot about Senor Pink during the anime recaps recently, so I don't even feel like talking about that.
I'm honestly surprised how much prominence Senor Pink had. Like, even on that volume 77 cover, he's like dead smack in the middle.
Not only is he dead, he's on the spine.
Yeah, I'm surprised by that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a sign, especially when you look at the kind of surprising full chapter like backstory that he got. I think he was just like Oda created him and then like decided he really liked that character.
Well, the editor.
I heard that story with the editor. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's Sugita liked him a little too much, and Oda's like, okay, that sounds like a good idea.
I'm in their camp on that one. I'm an old man too.
You're an old man wearing a diaper.
Hey, shh.
Kidding. I'm kidding. Am I? Anyway, so out of this, though, we get some really cool, like, spreads, like the one where Luffy riding Musi and the whole crew, and
we got an episode title out of that. I see a little bulletu of a man.
Well, was that then?
It was at chapter 748.
Okay. It was whatever chapter had the bullet in
it. That's not a silhouette. That's a bullet.
And Attack on Pika, a great title.
Yeah. This whole section was pretty fun. And we also find out that Korra, Law drops this earlier with Korra that he was Doflamingo's younger brother. We'll talk about that a little bit later. I'm trying to think. The rest of this is just fighting, which not bad. I mean, you got the fight with all the Coliseum members just like fighting their way up Pika. You have the stuff with Sabo and Fujitora.
That stuff I usually enjoy from Oda, because the one thing I think One Piece takes precedent over like every other kind of shonen series, especially the more popular ones, is that he's really good about like literally illustrating the chaos of war. And battle, and like when you have these Coliseum characters running up this now reformed Dressrosa, you don't get lost on their objective or where they're heading, and who these people are and what they're fighting against. Like you feel the scale of Pika and like all the Doflamingo officers, and when they start getting taken out one after the other, like Dagama or Suleiman or whomever, you feel the loss. Like nope, got to keep moving forward, and it's something Oda does ad nauseum. Like you think about Enies Lobby with like Sodom and Gomorrah and the Frankie family. Same thing.
Now that you mention it, this part is super similar to that siege on Enies Lobby. It's kind of like a siege, I want to say on Dressrosa, but they have a goal. They're trying to get somewhere, and people fall along the way, quote unquote fall. And there are fights and the one-on-one fight kind of thing that we get. But I mean, kind of in a more chaotic situation, but
and people kind of peel off at appropriate times because like everyone kind of finds their match, and that's where they end up.
It's actually very similar to Enies Lobby, except not with the crew.
And it's actually there was a point at like halfway through 75 where the Doflamingo family basically gets together and regroups. It was like after I mean, Buffalo isn't there because his neck just got broken. He got thrown out of the window. But and it was also in this spread that I noticed that Pika has skinnier legs than Baby 5 does because they're standing right next to each other.
Oh my god.
Well, I started to think it was weird then, but at the end when they reveal his actual body, it makes it so much better.
I mean, so we talked about this a little bit just a couple minutes ago that it took like a volume for Luffy to get to Doflamingo the first time, and now it takes like I think 2 to 3 volumes for him to get him, and he gets to a string clone here, gets stuck in a well.
Gets tricked into going into a well.
Gets tricked into a well. If only Lassie were there. I guess Abdullah and Cheat will do.
They reverse Lassied him.
The reverse lesson.
Damn Funk Brothers.
Wow, that was. But why did we never make that reference? Did we?
That would have been a good one.
That would have been a great episode title.
That's pretty awesome.
We missed out.
Although my little Bellamy friendship is painful, I think is a good.
That comes later.
Yeah, it's not that much later.
No.
What else do we have at this point that we haven't? The man behind the cravat we mentioned. The Doflamingo show because he was on that stupid television forever. Admiral Magoo 2, the Magooining, I think was at the end of this volume.
Well, this is Sabo versus Fujitora.
Yeah, when he throws a meteor through the birdcage, it's like that's not a smart idea.
No.
Oops.
What else? I think that kind of brings
Just
us
a lot
to
of
volume
charging.
76.
Yeah, a lot of Luffy, basically running around.
So this is this volume just came out, and it was cool to read it.
In volume 76.
Volume, yeah, that's what we're in now, I think.
Yeah.
I should have been announcing more what volumes we were in. At the end, we'll talk about like favorite covers and stuff. If you want.
The point of me talking about that 2-page spread in the middle of 75 was that makes it so much more like Enies Lobby, like dispatching the whole family around to places on the island to intercept people.
So I mean that all is going on. The Bellamy is confronting Doflamingo. You got the Dellinger stabbing people with his horns. You got Gladius being whatever the hell he is. Yeah. You also get and this was my first time seeing like in English, Stephen, the Tontatas warning the factory Tontatas about.
Yeah, that was nice to see. Visually lettered out like that. Works well.
Yeah, that'll never happen in the anime, so it's cool to.
No,
it actually looks great in the manga.
And granted, we never talked about the first cover story from this with Caribou, and we shouldn't. But at the end of volume 75 is the beginning of the Jinbei cover story, which I found infinitely more charming going through it in a marathon.
Yeah, the Jinbei cover story is charming with a little bit of interesting at the end, which I like.
Yeah.
Caribou is annoying with a little bit of interesting at the end.
For sure.
I found myself laughing at it a lot more on the second try.
The Caribou one?
Yeah.
Caribou is a clown. He's a dud.
It's not a bad cover story. It just was much like Dressrosa. It was just too long.
And I think we were not as
aboard the Caribou train.
Well, yeah, exactly. we were not as eager to be excited about him as a sympathetic character.
See, that's another great episode title if we were doing that. The Caribou train. Never will happen.
Law has also been put in handcuffs at this point, which is another one of my more hated MacGuffins.
Oh boy,
it's such a.
Although it does give us the ridiculous 3-face thing of like Leo telling Bartolomeo, Robin, and Rebecca that humans can fly with bugs, and they just give this incredulous look, which is hilarious. But yeah, end of volume 75 is the beginning, or we get the first hints of Law's flashback with the grenades when he first meets Doflamingo.
Ed, why are you always so far behind?
Well, you said volume 76 like a minute ago.
Okay.
Jesus.
Okay. We also get, I think, as they're going up, we get a lot. I actually, in retrospect, love all the gags with Ferrul going up that's the horse. Going up the Pika/plateau. I mean, you get the gag, the 30, 40, whatever, however long the grudge has been going on. I still enjoy that gag a lot. I think a lot of cool stuff comes from those characters. We also get the kind of in the middle of nowhere, the introduction of Kanjuro.
The long-awaited
very
introduction
long-awaited
of Kanjuro, who turns out to be basically, I mean, he serves a purpose, like in terms of helping, stuff move around in the arc. But I think given how long the anticipation had gone, he ends up being very much like a comic relief character rather than very important.
But at the same time, probably one of my favorite. I love him.
He leads to some of the best moments for sure.
Yeah, I love Kinemon and Kanjuro. I recently did a Twitter poll just to test those out. And
all the Wano stuff is going to be really, really fun later. Yeah, now that we're being introduced to these guys really early.
Well, I was surprised how Kinemon just like kicked Kanjuro's ass, and I have a feeling it has something to do with the coloring because I'm not a huge fan of how Kanjuro is colored. But
me neither.
but his
Yeah.
power is fantastic. I love his attitude in general, his personality from what we've seen so far, and his drawing ability. All make for a very funny character. So meanwhile, as we go through this, fights kind of take place in the background. We get some of Luffy's fight, some of Zoro's fight, and then our favorite chapter. Can you even guess what this is? Which is part of Frankie's fight. And we get Queen Oric of Vacusuck. We've talked about this, I think, ad nauseum.
Very recently because of the anime.
Yeah.
It's a man's world.
I'm going to refuse to talk about it, but this, I think, this was the low point for me in the arc, and the surrounding chapters also kind of more the succeeding chapters where Sugar returns again, and
we do get ridiculous Usopp ammunition out of it, but that's about it.
Oh, that was great, yeah.
Once Oda is numbering the different steps that they have to breach to get to the castle, then you know you're in for a slog.
Well, I remember the point where it gets good again because we got really excited, and I'll let you know when we get there. I mean, we get the introduction with Diamante, Gladius does something, I don't know.
That just happened in the anime as well.
Robin does some cool stuff. I think Robin was a lot of fun this arc. She didn't get like anything specific, to do, but everything she did was pretty damn badass. So I'm not going to complain that much. Yeah,
hanging out with Rebecca.
Yeah, she did that like the flower, the gigantesco mono. I'm looking at that panel, which was this really cool thing where she was about to crush Gladius. Again, who cares? And you get the cool side gravity thing with Fujitora. There was all these cool fights going on, but Ed, it had that problem that you hate, which is we're going from scene to scene to scene to scene. And yes, all those little scenes are cool, but it's super disjointed.
Yeah.
Which is a problem. And things kind of start getting cool again as they reach the top, Law and Luffy. I think this was dubbed by Matt Cohen as the "Fuck Yeah" panel. We'll kick his ass. And I think that's where things kind of pick up because this is the Usopp hockey chapter, which was one of the definitely the highlight of volume 76 for me. Definitely, by far.
Definitely.
Well, not the scene with Rebecca and Kyros. Like, you don't need to fight anymore. You don't.
Nope.
Okay.
First off, okay, maybe that's important for the arc. Whatever.
It's important for the emotional story of Kyros.
This is super important for Usopp's character beyond nothing, and it's
who is much more important to everybody than Kyros.
Rebecca and Kyros. Yeah. Well, it also kind of I love how the chapter with Usopp brings things back from Water 7 Ennius Lobby, where it's like I can't do anything without my captain. I need to remember my captain. I need to remember why I'm here. And his motivation in what he does is just like such progress for Usopp's character. I think that's why we're all really big fans of his character in general. It progresses and he grows with the story like none of the other ones do. I think I could say that.
Yeah.
Plus hockey. And plus that drawing of him that freaks out Sugar.
Yeah. Plus this answers the question, like, will other crew members develop forms of hockey? And if Usopp's broken that mold already, then the answer is yes.
And Sanji and Zoro.
Yes, as well,
yeah.
And definitely Zoro. We see proof of that many times over. We also, and in the SBS, Oda says Sanji and Zoro have their individual types. And in that same chapter is when Luffy and Law finally confront Doflamingo again. And we get that fight, which is great. It takes the rest of the arc, but it's great. The beginning of it here in volume 76, though, is
the great substitution, the trick with the Red Hawk.
Yes,
that was awesome. But I'm like, oh man, this fight couldn't possibly be over, could it? Nope.
Well,
no, of course not. That was the first blow, really.
And we knew that, but that chapter was amazing. That was so much fun to go through.
Although I'll be honest, the chapter with Usopp firing the thing at Sugar actually was like at the time one of my favorite chapters. I read through it. It wasn't nearly as suspenseful the second time around.
Well, when you know what's going to happen.
Exactly.
I mean, at the time, you're like, is he going to do it? Is he going to do it? What's he going to do? What's in there? What is in there?
Well, I still love Usopp's trajectory of how he, like, the calculated explosions, how he got in. It's really thoughtful. It's If anything, it's like how, like, Zoro and Luffy always get, like, new badass moves at the end of an arc or after defeating an opponent. That's Usopp's new badass thing. It's just increasing his skill and his sniping range.
So yeah, the fight with Doflamingo Law, it's the stuff. I don't know if you guys want to mention anything about that. And then we get into the flashback, and I want to talk about this as a whole because I'm not talking about this piece to piece because there's a lot, and this might be one of like my top flashbacks. I really like this one. I don't know if it's the saddest necessarily.
Well, combined with I take this flashback and Doflamingo's flashback as two parts of the same thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not just me. Okay.
I mean, what did you guys think of it? The flashback, this total flashback here.
Shows the power of love, man. Doflamingo grew up without no love. Or without love. That's bad double negative there. I shouldn't have done that. But Corazon showed, the love of a parent, the unconditional love of a parent is what it's supposed to be. And, he gave Law hope for the future.
But it's a really good flashback. It's not my favorite. I know everyone loves it, and boohoo, I'm a grumpy old grump. But it's really well planned out, especially the ending, and because you always expect the tragedy to happen, and that's where I'm always most interested. Is like, what's gonna happen?
Well, we know he dies from the very beginning, but
we know
makes
that
you give so much of a shit about it.
But like, I'm always interested in like, where's the instrument of destruction gonna be? And when they get to the island minion and the whole Virgo thing, I'm like, oh god.
And I love how they bring Sengoku into it, and also Tsuru to a lesser extent, but Sengoku is really important, and it becomes important again at the end of the arc when he has that, like, he's almost like Law's grandfather in a way, because he was like a father, because Sengoku showed that love to Rocinante. Yeah.
Steven, what did you think of this flashback?
Oh man, yeah, it's it is a really really good one. It's just kind of another example of how Oda is so good at this because of the way that he introduces a figure, and it's it's kind of one of those dick moves that he does because he always introduces like the coolest and most kind of admirable characters, kind of the parental figures, the sources of strength. Knowing, setting you up so that, of course, like any character who seems this cool has to die, because that's the whole point is they can't be around to continue to provide for these other characters that you love. But
otherwise they wouldn't become pirates,
Exactly. It's just part of the kind of construction of Oda's world here in One Piece. And, great, like an amazing character. I'd say fully, I would say fully worthy of being, kind of on the level of like a Belmare in terms of, the reader's attachment to them, and
both Marines.
They're very very similar, and the twists and turns and the way that, as Bryan was saying, the kind of the way that he kind of sneaks up on you and just kind of stabs you in the back when you're not expecting, just that one moment with Virgo. No, I'm talking about that one moment with Virgo where it's like, oh, that's how it all falls apart.
Yeah, it's the twist of fate, man. It always gets you because it's like, oh, if you just didn't do that one thing,
and
okay.
And it's so cool because I mean, we did Punk Hazard I guess a few months ago at this point, but putting that together with this and realizing why Law trembled at Virgo's presence, not necessarily because of his strength, but because of just how he completely destroyed everything.
I just had a thought I didn't realize till just now. This flashback combines two really important elements from the two previous most heartbreaking flashbacks, and that's Corazon being a Marine, which is like Belmare, but also takes place, the final like instance takes place in the snow country, like Chopper.
Yeah. I think also
and we should also mention Drake's appearance.
Yeah, Cool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's there.
Yeah.
And I always wonder if Drake and Law know that they've met once.
Well, they didn't meet, but
They were in
cross
the-
paths, I
They were,
guess.
yeah,
I-
the cross paths.
I think they'll realize their connection at some point, but
Yeah.
they didn't meet.
Well, yeah,
That'll
considering
be really
Drake does
cool.
work for Kaido, or works with Kaido.
Well, I just want to say that this ending, the whole ending with him in the box and him confessing to Law, and and then him trying to keep that silence until he dies is probably one of my favorite
Yeah.
moments in the series as a
Mhm.
whole. It's fantastic.
It's a great image, and I think it really, like, just the relationship between Law and Corazon is great on its own. But I think what really puts this whole kind of combined flashback over the top is how he ties that into and how he represents Doflamingo's backstory as well. And so you see things from his perspective too, and how he contrasts with his brother. I think that really is that's the Departed angle. It's like
Yeah.
you kind of see it from both sides, which makes it so rich.
Yeah. I also love
Also known as Infernal Affairs.
Yeah,
Infernal Affairs.
Yeah.
Yep.
I also love how they show what a shit Doflamingo has been ever since he was a child, with the influence of even with the the deficiencies of his upbringing, he was always evil. His brother turned out a lot like his father did, but he, even with loving parents, because he was a celestial dragon, he had that sort of infection in his thinking.
I've met
From the
people this
beginning.
spoiled before. I'm going to be honest.
Well, Zach, it's part of where you grew up.
It kind of reminds me of even back during a Drum with Wapple. Wapple's dad was a decent king, but Wapple's a spoiled shit. And I think was it Dragon was saying the same thing about how certain levels of nobility and being kind of disconnected with the common people creates this monster, and that it could even happen in Dragon's homeland is why it seems like part and parcel why he's a revolutionary.
I think that's part, and Ed, because I grew up with people, I mean, not they weren't psychopathic serial killers, but with superpowers of string superpowers. But it made me hate that personality type so much. I understand Luffy's detestability with it when we come to the final blows in this. All right, I think
episode titles from here. I would punch 500 doctors.
Great one.
And the sound of silence. Sound of Silence.
Sound of Silence is a great one. Stab Through the Heart. Come on. I know if Steve's listening, he'll love that one.
Reprise.
I had to write that because I accidentally titled it terribly. Also, Sergeant Dofi's Lolly Hearts Club Band was one I think Greg helped put together.
And the J. Peterman slave catalog has nothing to do with anything, but I thought that was much earlier on in the podcast.
No, I think it might have had to do with, I don't remember.
Dumb episode.
Was that a special?
No, I think
it had to-
it's
it was
chapter
dub-
760.
It had to do with dub episodes, I think.
No, I think we mentioned. I don't remember.
Maybe it was a piece together.
Maybe it was the part with Doflamingo saying, "I want a slave."
Yes, that might have been it.
Well, check the slave catalog. J. Peterman's been putting one together. I don't remember if anyone remembers what we were talking about. There you go. Let us know. I think we could move on. And this is Brian. This is exactly the point you were joining us here, because the next one after these, there's in a few chapters is Straw Hat Pirates of the Pancreas.
Yep.
We get a recap of everything that happened. I think we're in volume 77, by the way. And we're kind of where the anime is. The problem is so we get this devastating flashback, and then Law gets his arm cut off. In this, in the manga, I'm looking at it right now. Super brutal scene. I mean, do you guys have any thoughts on this this whole section here? And then the Luffy Bellamy, that never ends, does it?
It goes on for much, much longer. It ends. I think it ends off screen, and then we do a mild flashback to cover it in the manga, if I remember correctly.
Which was a really cool way to tell that story.
Well, okay, let's do this because things cut back and forth a lot. These are the fights we get. If you guys have anything you want to say about it, please let me know.
Cavendish season, Hakuba season.
Okay, we're not. You're too far already. Right, that's a first. That's a first. Then, we have Hyruden versus Mock Vice. Anyone want to say anything about that?
Gungnir.
Yeah, super uppercuts. Very cool.
Yep, love it.
Let's see. We got Lao G versus and Baby Five versus Sai and
I love-
Fight, everybody! Old men are fighting.
I love Lao G's like giant buff mode when he like Earth Sage Fist.
I love Lao G's all of his attacks, like stiff shoulder and back pain.
Yeah,
all the dialogue was really fun.
Wasn't there like a Medicare or insurance fraud or something like that?
Life? It was like
Life
battle
insurance?
insurance or something.
Yeah, that was this. That was the muscular form. Yeah,
Which reminded me of what's his face, Kumadori. His life returns. I wonder if it's some version of that. But,
I've got to say, I'm actually really excited for Lao G's dub because I think you could do some really fun things with those moves. Kind of Americanized slightly, and not like a 4Kids Americanized. I'm not suggesting that, but like
this is Doflamingo care.
drill back nail applied directly to the forehead.
Wow, that's an old reference for a commercial everyone hated.
Just why they remember it.
The Gladius Bartolomeo fight.
Whoop-de-doo.
Not bad.
Yeah,
That's probably the worst one.
It ends with one of the coolest thing. I like the barrier no me or whatever the hell he called it. I forgot.
I love what is with Cavendish unleashing Hakuba and like taking everybody out.
Oh, Dellinger and
Hakuba takes out Dellinger.
Hakuba and Ideo. Yeah. What else do we got?
It's kind of an unceremonious ending. Although it is kind of the sort of thing that would get Dellinger taken out because he's like this sort of shitty little teenage guy. It's like, oh, aren't you in trouble?
Dellinger was like a terror all the way through this.
At least Gladius had the cell, explosion kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was fun. I guess what else? Oh, we got the stuff with what the hell's her face? I don't have it in English here. No, the
Joria?
No, the Tontata.
Sugar.
Oh, Manshuri.
Manshuri. Wow, I forgot her name. This is bad. We just watched the episode too in the anime. So yeah, you got Giola and Manshuri, and Leo and Cub.
I do like the interaction with Manshuri and Leo because, like, we're set up as Manshuri as this like shitty little princess spoiled brat, but it's like, no, she's nice, and she only
what's
does
the word you use, Stephen?
She only does kind of shitty things to Leo because she likes him.
Yeah, it was like stuck up, annoying, fickle, irritating, mean spirited. It's like every single word he's just ragging on her, and it turns out it's all in Leo's head because he's so dense. He doesn't realize it.
It also brings back one of my favorite Oda lady faces, that pout face. That like Tashigi makes the same face when Zoro says something inane and she's like just puffs out her lips and like sucks in her lips and puffs out her cheeks. I just love that face.
Any other final thoughts on that one? Yeah. No? The last fight in the volume 77, which we got through nice and quick, is Frankie versus Senor Pink. So let's move on to volume 7.
No, we can't. We gotta go back. That's my favorite flashback of the arc.
Senor works at a bank.
See, it's a good chapter.
That was a great episode title. Yeah. Also, we since we're going through all of this volume, I could also say we had the Mean Streets of Nordis was a great one. Lomeo and Cabbaget, I was a fan of that. Cavendish season, Hakuba season, as you mentioned. Sewn Together, I am personally a fan of. Senor Works at a Bank, though, definitely my favorite. I think we were on a roll for those few, and the ones that are about to come, we were definitely on a roll as well. But Senor Pink, Brian, why don't you take that one?
Well, I think we discussed in the podcast that it's totally a reference of like a telenovela. Yeah. It's this over-the-top machismo, sad love story where it's just like, oh, my poor tragic wife, she's in a coma because I lied about her, about my, like, I'm really a dangerous criminal when I made believe that our perfect marriage was a lie. And it's this, like you said, Ed, it's like, when you read it again, it's silly. It's always been silly. And that's the sad thing. Like, we're dealing with two over-the-top silly characters having this battle. and it's this
kind of out of place.
Sappy, it's this really out of place, sappy love story. Not love story. It's this really out of place, sappy battle about these grown ass men in diapers and speedos.
Well, that's the
And
beginning of the fight too. Going back, like maybe a volume was right after Queen Auric, where it's like this is a serious battle of men. Nipple lights, diaper bombs,
diaper bombs. Like you can't take it seriously. I think that's
poop
the
jokes.
mistake. Yeah, I think that's the mistake people made with Senior Pink. He's
Yeah.
not serious. This is clearly fucking with the aesthetic of what a man should be.
See, I remember saying that when the diaper bombs happened, but then I felt like my time was being wasted. Like when we get to his backstory with the thing,
but it also proves how even Oda can take such a simple idea of like a man in a diaper costume and still creates this like really impactful emotional twist with his characters. Like hey, he's doing that to make his coma wife smile. It's so sad.
I think I said this very recently on the podcast as well. I think I'll enjoy this more again when it's dubbed, so that it has a super telenovela feeling to it, super overacted. Or maybe I should just read it like that. Oh, senor.
He's definitely one of the few characters in this series I think needs an accent.
Yeah.
Well, they are in Texas. The Funimation is in Texas, so
No, he needs a Clint Eastwood voice, I think. Or a Sean Connery voice.
Come on.
Senor Pink. He needs something as like, well, that's the most misogynistic person I could think of to give a voice to.
He just has to be like the non-union Mexican equivalent of James Bond.
Yes. Exactly.
Hefe Bond.
Mr. Bond.
The next fight, which we are in the anime right now talking about, is Diamante versus Kyros.
Great episode title. It was me, Diamante.
Oh boy.
How about that one? What did you think of that one?
I love that fight. I love because we just talked about this in the anime. It's really fresh. He does the falling spikes, and like Kyros like manages to bounce everything away, and people were really intent. I think Steve was intent on this. I think, but getting Rebecca involved in the battle, but. As I think we've gone over this a bunch of times, but this is like the point where it really was about Kyros, not about Rebecca. It's about Kyros coming to terms with his trauma and his past of having, not being able to protect his wife and really not being able to protect his daughter. He was able to teach her how to defend herself a little bit, but he still feels really guilty that he wasn't able to do anything before. And so him being able to do this on his own is really just sort of reclaiming his manhood that was stolen away from him however many years ago.
Yeah. I think a lot of this was like the moment where it became obvious beyond all doubt that, this isn't, this is Kyros' arc more so than Rebecca's arc. And I think, there was a lot of anticipation, especially among us, up to that point of like, well, we want to see Rebecca, take part in this, or we want to see Robin take part in this. And, they did to a smaller extent. Robin had some cool moments here of kind of self-sacrifice, but when you view it, when you come at it fresh, just viewing it, within the lens of that, ongoing story of Kyros trying to make things right, and ultimately, as you said, Ed, to be okay with himself, that it is a lot more powerful when you view it properly in that sense.
I definitely like back that up, because it is Kyros has to deliver the final blade on Diamante for revenge. And I even love that bit when Diamante's falling backward and knocks himself out on Scarlet's grave. that was a perfect capper to that.
I think
bit.
there was an SBS.
Almost a little too much, but just right.
No, it's like when Homer
fully enjoy that.
Like when Homer Simpson falls down the fire hydrant. He's fighting Bart's bigger brother.
Oh, his big brother. His back is all bent and broken. But I think the larger point with with Rebecca and Robin for the ending of this, specifically more Rebecca, is that we're also looking at this from like a cultural perspective where we want to see strong female characters, do for themselves. And Rebecca's whole thing in this arc, she was constantly being saved and taken care of by people. And Robin, we've been waiting for her to have a one-on-one since Skypiea. So I think all that is factoring into why we just kept pushing that idea forward.
Yeah.
As opposed to recognizing that this is Kyros' vengeance.
Well,
in a way.
Kyros definitely deserves this. I don't think any of us say that he shouldn't have. I think he was the right person to take down Diamante. I'm fine with that.
And it also leads into that interesting situation at the very, very end of the arc when Rebecca and Viola both get involved with the fight, but we'll get to that in a little bit.
That I did not like as much, but we'll get to that in a little bit, because the next fight we have is Pika versus Zoro, and this was fantastic. This I love. I think this is kind of where things picked back up again, because especially oh my god, I think it's 2 chapters in. For the episode titles, by the way, Riddler on the Roof, Ain't No Mountain High Enough.
One Punched Man, but that was Bellamy versus Luffy.
I think that was Bellamy versus Luffy. That's a good one, but we'll get to that in a second. This, I think, this almost made me as much of a Zoro fanboy as Ed is. And Ed's a big Zoro fan.
And probably you would be correct.
I don't even know what to say about it, except that it's some of my favorite stuff Oda has done recently.
The tactics number 5 is well, none of these are going to work, so I guess I'll just have to fly through the air and cut him.
It's those 2-page spreads. They're unbelievable. They are so damn awesome.
And him talking, not talking down to, but giving orders to Orlumbus and the king of King Elisabello. Yeah.
Although king of wherever you are,
the king of whatever. How dare you?
Yeah, the thing about this is it's coming. You're in the upward ramp, right? Of okay, we're doing all the fights. Start with the real low ones, and we're gonna get more important as we get closer to Doflamingo. And there's a lot of fatigue going through it. We got through Diamante and Kyros because it was something that had been a long time coming story wise. But all the other stuff was just okay, we just have to get through this so we can get on with the story. And I think the Zoro and Pika was the point where Oda finally kind of pulled out all the stops and was like, all right, you want a real fight? Here's a real fight. And, just the spectacle of it was impossible. It's just irresistible. If you're reading a shonen fighting manga, this is the kind of stuff where, you can't read this stuff and not enjoy stuff of is this ridiculous, because it was just
I think the only thing
that didn't make as much sense was the Buddhist worlds, Zoro's
I don't care, it was
long-winded
awesome.
explanation of his attack. That was awesome, but who cares? Who really cares?
It's kind of cool because it makes no sense, which is often the case with Zoro's attacks.
But I love his fight IQ of figuring out the way to beat Pika. It's really impressive.
Yeah. And I think I'm trying to even remember what the hell I was going to... It's just, we as a podcasters tend to just want to get to the juicy exposition stuff. Yeah, not necessarily the fights. We want to see the storytelling. But this was an example where we're I want to see more of this shit. It was great. And
brilliantly laid out, too. I mean, the detail on Pika's, severed statue piece by piece.
And you can see the tiny little Zoro flying through. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Next one is Luffy versus Bellamy. We mentioned One Punch Man, and that is because that again happens. So Skypiea reference.
I like the idea of Bellamy having this sort of stubborn pride, but it's also you want to smack the bastard.
Yeah, it's a character trait that I think. I'm not saying that only Japanese people would understand this, but I think it would be viewed differently from a Japanese audience than from our perspective, because we don't necessarily instill kind of blind loyalty as a virtue quite as much.
No, we definitely don't.
Or the idea of your pride kind of forcing you down this path that you've started. We kind of assume, oh well, if you realize you're making a mistake, you go back and you correct it. You change your ways. But Bellamy's kind of old school in that way, and so yeah, it was a little more frustrating, I imagine, for from our perspective.
So what happens next is that Law dies. And he never comes back again until 3 chapters later. What do you think of this whole section? The Law dying, Law not dying, Law coming back.
Not a fan of this stuff.
No,
not a fan.
Although we did get Goop Troop Bloop Blurp out of it.
Well, no, that's later.
Beep. Right here.
Well, I do like it. The only thing I like about it is that when he does show up again, it's freaking awesome. He does that. What the hell was the name of that? The electrocuting.
Shambles.
No, he does the.
Gamma knife.
Yeah, is that the one?
Gamma knife.
And rips up his insides,
Which leads to my theory about Doflamingo. Like, as soon as he loses control of his powers, all of his insides are gonna spread out. Never ended up happening though.
He was already knocked unconscious.
Well, then and then Doflamingo just gets up again, and he's like the freaking Terminator. He just he can't put him down.
What was great about that scene specifically is that was Law's last attempt, and you feel it. Law's just like, I can't do anymore. He's crying. He's on the edge of his rope.
But he does manage to reclaim his pride and does defeat Trouble, though.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that kind of turnaround with Law is we kind of gave it to Oda both ways with Law in this arc, because in the first half when he's doing the stuff with Green Bit and everything, his whole thing is like, I got to save strength, you guys got to fight for me, you guys got to do this stuff. And then, we see, and then at the end here, we see the string of like seemingly impossible feats that he pulls off, where it's like, okay, how is he able to do that? Like, he was just dying, and he does this other thing, and then he does this other thing. And then we were like, oh, this is too ridiculous. Like, how could Law do all of this stuff? And maybe it's just because the arc was too long for that stuff to kind of have the proper context or perspective on it. But I feel like when you look at Law kind of holding back in the first part of the arc, it does make more sense, that he is able to achieve these ridiculous things because he was holding back, and then he kind of overextends himself to make them win.
And then right after this, as the sort of Luffy Doflamingo one-on-one fight begins, he gets taken down to the plateau, and where he gets to be healed.
The stuff with Trouble, did we mention? Because he does, get defeated. And I think that's worth maybe quickly mentioning.
But they also quickly point out how like Trouble's the ultimate, the epithet to how like Doflamingo's the champion of evil. He's kind of like coaching him for most of his life too.
He was the one who gave him the gun and the devil fruit.
Yeah.
The gun, more importantly.
And then we find out that he was basically Sham from the Miyaban brothers all along. Just had a real skinny.
What a sham.
That still doesn't completely make sense with the Usopp stuff. I don't know if we'll ever get an explanation as to the mistake Oda made when he suddenly decided that he was a Paramecia and not a Logia.
Well, I looked at the panel in the comic. You could believe that he actually had a body hunter there, but the anime kind of messes that up.
Oh yeah, well that's not the first time.
Yeah.
Then we get the final fight.
That's when things got knocked into fourth gear.
Yeah, I think we could probably discuss this all in one part because it goes back and forth, and we did this very recently. So the rest of volume 78 and into volume 79. I mean, what do you think of this final fight?
It shows how fast and how powerful Luffy can be in his new form, and even that still wasn't enough to finally beat Doflamingo. So he had to go for 10 minutes and like get this break.
The 10 minutes thing kind of killed me. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
But it did give him the opportunity to have the Rebecca and Viola and the King Riku speech and the Gyat speech. There's all that stuff that happened.
I felt like it kind of crippled the ending. I'm not saying he should have been defeated easily, but the 10 minutes, could you make it 5?
I disagree with that, because you have to remember, like, this whole arc is a tournament fight, like a wrestling event or a boxing ring. So you set up the birdcage, it's like everyone's in the ring now. And that moment, that 10 minutes is basically Luffy going like, everyone chanting Luffy, like, Luffy, Luffy, Luffy. It's just like
it definitely works better in marathoning it, because I reread through the whole thing, and it's definitely a lot better.
I thought that's his Goku moment.
I thought all that was I thought all that was fully necessary for this arc.
And there was a little bit that I loved with Manchuri and Cub be like, this is all I can do. Like, she does the thing to give the 5 minutes of health, like dropping the dandelions. And she's like, this is how I can fight. This is really all I can do, so I can cry. And Cub says, like, that's a fine way to fight, too, if that's what you can do.
And everyone trying to stop the birdcage. I mean, this just happened very recently, even in our books at this point. But Yeah, I mean, the Gear 4 stuff was awesome. The Awakening Devil Fruit stuff was awesome. I think
That was
the
like
stuff,
hell on earth. That was terrifying.
I think, when we were reading about the Zoro fight with Pika, we're like, okay, this Luffy fight better be freaking great. There's a lot to live up to here. And I think it did. I think it was a little long, but I think it has some of the most iconic scenes. Like everything in Gear 4, I love to death. I love the design. I love all of the moves. It combines, as Oda, would normally, it combines the ridiculous with the awesome, the bouncing ball down the street, for example. Oh, I heard he was 6 meters. He's only 4 meters or whatever it was. And all that little stuff. And also, just Doflamingo's just a freaking, like, zombie. You beat him, he comes back up. You beat him, he comes back up. You beat him. So it just made it super satisfying when he eventually throws him all the way back into the underground port, and ends that. And Gyatso takes an entire chapter to announce the winner, but it's over at that point.
Well, Gyatso's blubbering is pretty hilarious, actually.
And then we get like the post arc stuff, which we really
and Burgess does try to interfere during that 10 minutes as well. That's another thing that happens.
I thought that was really cool, like a really cool thing to add, because we were talking the whole arc like, what's Burgess doing?
Yeah.
Well, no, and we saw that thing with Koala like many chapters ago at this point.
Right. I think it was in volume. I think it was during the Bellamy fight where she notices something. It's like, oh, there's someone big here, and I can't stop it. Stop him.
I have a rule about stories as I do about video games. Is if the video game's long, I want my ending and my climax to be long too.
Yes, you're right. I think if it was a 2-chapter climax here, you'd be like, oh, I just read 10 chapters for the 10 volumes for that. No, it's in a way it's good that it ended like that. I mean, you get the resolution with Fujitora, I want to say prostrating. I had never used that word prior to
bowing down.
No, he can prostate if he wants to.
Well, that's a different issue. The post arc stuff is great in this one because you get that, you get the 5 elders and those reveals,
and the angry man yelling.
You get reactions from all the supernovas. You get Smoker's reaction. You get the angry man yelling. You get the mini amnesia. If speaking of telenovelas, the amnesia story from Sabo, which I am not a fan of. I'm going to say,
but to be fair, Oda's first and so far only time doing that. It's an old trope. He hasn't done it.
Yeah.
I still don't. I'm sorry. That annoys me.
I think it's less of like a interesting thing for Sabo to have, and more of just like him covering his tracks of like, why wasn't Sabo making contact with Luffy before this, basically.
Sakazuki.
What?
That was the in the newspaper.
Right, the Sakazuki. Yeah, we forgot to mention in the podcast that is very clever. That almost makes it worth it. Almost. And then we get the stuff leading into the next arc. So I'll skip the what the twirly brows were up to this whole time, and you get a slight introduction of Kaido to end off volume 79 and volume 80. We know what happens next. I don't even have to look at it because it's the stuff where they escape the island, they form an alliance.
I think we're too close to that to really look at it in retrospect.
Well, the only thing I could look at it in retrospect is I think it does a very good job of the stuff we talked at the very beginning of this podcast and bringing it all full circle. I think it makes the Coliseum stuff pay off very well. Yes, I think it makes the toy stuff, now it's not the land of toys, it's the land of fairies or little people, the tontatas. I think he capped it off very well. I think the ending is strong and the beginning is strong, and there are parts in the middle that are incredible, but there's parts in the middle that are also terrible. Not the worst that we've ever. Well, some are the worst, but most are just kind of like, come on, we don't need this. Let's go through some final thoughts, Brian.
I love Dressrosa. It would be a fun place to visit, and as far as the story goes, it has everything I would need. It has a new and interesting world. It has severe ramifications for where we're going to end up in the series. Doflamingo is a fucking badass. His crew are a bunch of nuts, and Luffy's got a whole new crew of nuts to follow him on his adventure. Level ups for Zoro, Usopp, Luffy as well. Yeah. And it
I
was
don't know. And
it was
also, oh, sorry, I'll let you finish. Sorry.
no, no. I was just gonna say, people compared it to Alabasta, and that's a fair comparison because both have to deal with what it means to rule and the importance that the royalty has, like good royalty has to like the people of the One Piece universe.
I'd say, just to that one little point, I'd say it's like the best parts of Alabasta with the worst parts of Enies Lobby thrown into one arc. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I accept that.
So, I mean, he took the things that he should have from Alabasta and it's like, okay, I'm going to make this bigger and better. And then he's like, I'll throw this shit into.
Well, it also had a great part from Enies Lobby, which is the historical flashback.
Steven, what did you think of this arc? We're a little close to it, I understand, but
yeah. Man, yeah, it's tricky. Like I am curious to see, once we are several years out from here, and we've had maybe a handful more arcs in between. I would love to see how my opinion changes, to see if there's anything that kind of retroactively strengthens the material, because I do think I think the tent analogy is really good, because it's like there are tentpole moments in the middle of the arc where it's like it's propping up where it's really sagging, because it's just a little bit too big for its own good. It has some of the highest highs in the series, but there's a lot of kind of struggling along in between. And it's in that sense, it's kind of fascinating as like a One Piece scholar, if you want to think of ourselves that way, because we're so used to tracking and kind of following the patterns of his arcs and the way that they fit together, and being such an outlier in terms of its size. What works, what doesn't work, and how did he kind of what did he do? What did he change to adapt to having such a larger scope? And I mean, it's certainly unforgettable, I would say. It'll definitely be one of those arcs that everyone has an opinion on. I'm for one thing, I am very glad as a translator. One of the things that really got to me at the end, just in terms of fatigue, especially with what you were saying, Zach, about the 10-minute overlap where he has to fill in the time, and having all of the people, work together, kind of doing this like Ghostbusters 2 thing of like, the whole city has to work together for each other.
The end of Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, that sort of thing that kind of drove me crazy, was just because, as the translator, I am acutely aware of all of the dialogue and all of the text. And Dressrosa, like, I should have, when people would do the SBS things where it's like, oh, Oda, I counted up all the dons throughout the entire series, or there was someone else who like counted all of the exclamation points.
Ugh.
I feel like they should do that with all of the ra and kya sound effects in Dressrosa, because they were everywhere constantly, especially, once the birdcage started, and, there's just a constant background roar of people, and, him kind of bringing the whole, story of the kingdom coming together, and all of the people who are not really characters, they're just the townspeople, working together. It was nice and all, and it's certainly a part of that story that shouldn't be overlooked, especially because the loss of their memories was such a big kind of emotional aspect to the story in the first half, where they're all unaware of the people that they've forgotten. Mm-hmm. But by the end, I was just like, oh my, I just don't care about these these random townspeople. I just want to to see Luffy versus Doflamingo come to its climax. And, I think that hit me especially hard, just because of how, constant it was to be reminded of the presence of the crowds and the nameless people, explaining things and, causing things to happen. And it was just, that was probably the single most fatigue inducing element of the arc for me. And that's one of the things that I, just in a negative sense, to contrast to the awesome, unforgettable moments of the arc, is that was what kind of dragged it down from possibly being like, I don't know. I think we're gonna do our arc rankings soon,
at the end of the
but
year,
but it might have. I'm not sure if I am ready to say that it's like a top 3 or even a top 5 arc, but it
Certainly
had
top 10.
Yeah.
Well, how many arcs have we had? I gotta.
There's been a lot of arcs, man.
It depends on how we classify them, I guess. But
Ed, what were your opinions?
I really liked this arc even more upon marathoning it, which isn't an uncommon occurrence for the emotional aspect of it with the Kyros and Rebecca story, and really seeing how like childhood affects someone, contrasting with Doflamingo and Law. But I feel like it was dragged down a lot by a lot of characters and a broad scope, which I think dragged it through the middle. And I also really love the wrestling elements that they brought into it, because everyone knows how big of a wrestling fan Oda is, and he really gets to show it in this arc, and I appreciated it. It's like the tropes of the announcer and all the homages to wrestlers, which continue to this very chapter.
I think out of this arc, he may have also, gotten in touch with more of the Japanese wrestler. What's his name again?
Oh, Minoru Suzuki.
Minoru Suzuki,
yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if that, they forged a friendship because of this arc. And I mean, this is. Ed, did you have anything more to say? I want to completely.
Not really. I think I've said pretty much all I want to say throughout this whole episode.
This is an important. Stephen mentioned, how long this was, and in your translating career for One Piece, this is at least half of what you've done, right? I think that's fair to say.
Yeah,
for One Piece.
Yeah, probably more so, because I did Punk Hazard, which was half as long, and then I did like the end of Fishman Island. So yeah, I probably did like 7 volumes before this, and then 10 just of Dressrosa. So,
and I mean, for us at the podcast, I mean, time wise, it was around half of our run so far. And we've been going on for a while. And episode wise, it was over a third of what we did, because we used to do 2 episodes a week for some reason back in the day. And I think doing the podcast kind of made me that's what kind of made, I think, the fatigue even worse, because you kind of realize how long you're doing this when you do a podcast about it. It's like, okay, we started on March 5th, 2013, and we ended this arc on September 28th, 2015. And think about what kind of people we were, what kind of podcast we were, where we were in our lives in March of 2013. And then think about where you were, listeners out there as well, in September, the end of September 2015. You're a completely different person.
When you mentioned the point where you went on your bar sabbatical, and then it ended with the In Japan episode where it was like, oh yeah, that was when you filmed OPP Japan, not to mention like all of the production, how long it took us to put it together and how long ago the release was.
Released a year ago. It was released a year ago.
So I went away on April 1st. So I'm going to go by chapter, because I have this nice chart now. So I went to study for the bar in chapter 703. I took the bar on chapter 715, Dead Grandma, appropriate for the bar. Then went to Japan, chapter 716 through chapter 718. We produced the film, which took a while, I'm going to be honest, and it came out still in Dressrosa, chapter 762. Stabbed Through the Heart was around when we did it. Initial D. Oh, that was a great title too. We didn't mention. So around that time, and it has been out since then. And we did OPP Dallas in the middle of this, and have been releasing it. Think of all the little things we've done on the podcast. Even we had Sasaki-san on, and that was chapter 700. And where the hell was that? I have to find that. I saw that in the middle here while we were talking, and I think it was toward the beginning of this. I can't even find it. It's chapter 733, so that's right in the middle there. We've done a lot of stuff here, and it's been a crazy amount of time. I almost feel like it's a retrospective of my life over the last 2 years, in which I've become a very vastly different person. I mean, Ed, you were in law school when you started too, and you were gone when you left. Steve was in Los Angeles when we left, and he was no, he wasn't in college when we started. But it's been a wild ride, and it isn't structured like anything else we've seen. Steven makes a very good point. Which makes me feel kind of conflicted about it, because it definitely has some of my favorite moments throughout the series, but it, like, thinking about it frustrates the shit out of me. The arc, and I don't think it's the material. I think it's covering the material. So and for you, Stephen, translating the material, which is why I went through the length of time over and over again just now. So I'm like, maybe we're going to do story arc ranking, as we said, at the end of the year, or not at the end of the year, in a couple weeks, when I think November 16th, hopefully. And I don't think we're the right people to judge it in a way, because we've been kind of along for this ride in a way that it kind of hurts us along the ride.
It's a lot more intensive an experience than for most people who just read a chapter every week.
That's why I should have pressed Miles more to come on today, but I didn't want to make him sit through 2-3 hour sessions of this in a week, because I'm like curious. So what was it like just reading through the whole thing? I mean, he seemed to be on the more negative side about it. Like, oof, that was a thing I just went through. But at the same time, there's just so much good that came out of it, and it's super important to the story, as I'm sure we'll see now.
I think we can all kind of agree that if he's going to do he should never do an arc this long again.
No, don't. Oda, do not do that.
Unless it's the final arc.
But if he does, yes, it should be the end. He should get every last thing that he needs to get, in the last arc. That's basically the lesson that we learned from this.
I think the other lesson is, if you're going to do this kind of stuff, don't throw a bunch of elements in one island or in one story or in one setting. Spread it out. Do it in different places. Let's at least explore the world. If we're going to have a Coliseum, let's have that in one place. If we're going to, a lot of this could have been separated and still worked, I think. I think it could have been organized a little better, frankly. I mean, I think everyone out there listening probably agrees with that statement. So before we go into some listener thing, we'll take a little break and do that. But we have some final episode titles, besides stuff like Goop Troop Loop Blorp, which we mentioned. And that's when things got knocked into fourth gear. Or Brian, who just had to run out because we've been talking about Dressrosa for 2.5 hours. More Bounce to the Ounce, and Aojiji and Akanunu.
Senator Akanunu.
See, the thing is, I like all of these titles a lot. I don't want to just read out all of our titles.
Well, only the ones that have to do with the arc, then. Gats and his gals.
Maynard Mike XXL, which is a reference that's not going to make sense even now.
Six Angry Men.
Revolutionary by Calvin Klein. I'm still very proud of.
Let's Fly. Oh no, that's not from the Dressrosa, really.
Oh, it kind of is.
The Cracker Man is also there.
Pone Gorilla.
Yeah. Deep Dish Dressrosa.
Boozin' Makes Me Feel Good, I guess, would be kind of... Yeah. And on the good ship, Luffy Pop is okay. I'm okay with that one. No, this has been a lot of fun going over just now. I thought this would be a lot more painful, like bringing back bad memories. But, when it was good, it was great. When it was not good, it was just a slog, which is... So there's something that's worse about being mediocre than just terrible. When something's terrible, it's kind of exciting to talk about. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And some of these chapters were just mediocre. I think I had more fun doing Queen Orica Vacusuck, for example, than let's just pick a random one that I don't remember. Like Lomeo and Cabbaget. I don't remember what the hell we talked about there. I mean, it was Bartolomeo and Cavendish.
Although I did notice that in the beginning of the volumes, Cavendish is called Cabbage. Like at the rundown of characters in the very front of the volume, he's called Cabbage a couple of times, I think.
Is that an accident?
Not sure. I'll have to go back and look at which one that was.
Anyway, let's take a little break. Let's go in to see what you guys think.
All right.
right, before we round off today, I want to, see what you guys out there thought. So, Ed, what's the time for?
Piece the dress? Yeah, piece the dress.
Yeah, okay, that sounds a little off, but I'm going to go with that. That's Piece the Dress. This dress Olga, this piece. So these are kind of your quick thoughts that we got on Twitter. I'm curious. Let's see how jaded we are about this. We were talking at the end. First one comes from M. Kirshner 12, who says, arc fatigue got to everyone in the end, but as one story, it's fantastic. Almost 2 or 3 arcs in one. Hey, it's kind of like what we said, right? Yeah. Party of 5600. Oh, I like that one. Hey, your name's after Dressrosa. You can't hate it, right? Way too long, obviously, but the end of it made it worth it by building up the Grand Fleet. Oh, and Gear 4 was amazing. Yeah, we kind of glossed over the Grand Fleet stuff because it just happened. I think
close to it still.
I mean, do you think that makes it worth? Like, that made the Coliseum really worth it for me.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things. I guess in retrospect, we'll see how impactful the fleet is. I mean, it's going to have an impact for sure. But we just don't really know to what extent that's going to affect our enjoyment of the series, I suppose, in the future.
Eric's stuff said, something was certainly lost in the myriad of characters introduced and the length of the arc itself. It felt it dragged at some points, and I lost the adventure feel that I normally get from One Piece, but that's just me. I don't disagree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think any of us disagree with that, right? I understand the spirit adventure thing being lost because we were.
Well, that's the thing that I was saying. It's like the first 2 or 3 volumes or so that's kind of where the adventure is because he's still introducing these elements, and then once you kind of hit that one turning point we talked about, then it's like he sort of closes off the loop.
The birdcage literally closes us off.
The birdcage closes us off, and it's like, okay, now we actually have to solve all of these issues and. There are some surprises in there, but it's mostly, there's just a lot of, okay, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. We already know this stuff. That's where the lack of adventure comes in because there aren't as many surprises.
And I think it,
you really recaptured that though, really over the last few chapters, I think.
I think that's true. And having marathoning through the whole thing, I think helps alleviate some of that.
Sure.
I think all of the people posting right now, or most of them, probably read it week to week or in bunches, and I think that definitely hurts the arc in that feeling. A similar feeling I felt, the spirit of adventure, coming back as it is in this new arc, was after the whole Marineford stuff, and we go to Fishman Island, and I was like, and I mean we know what happens next, but it was still like, yes, it's time for an adventure. Let's have a new adventure. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
I'm feeling
we're really
right
going
now
into uncharted territory, I think.
right now.
Yes.
In the story, the next arc. Next one comes from Stregit, Strejt. I don't know how you'd pronounce that. As a whole, one of the best arcs so far, but its pacing made it sometimes atrocious to read weekly. It needs like minus 25 chapters.
I don't know about that. I don't know if it needs minus 25 chapters. I think it
needs minus 10 at least.
Maybe. Yeah, because like there's a lot of stuff in there. We get annoyed that there's a lot of stuff, but the stuff is important, and I don't think as much of it can be taken out as people think.
Bria P says it's over. High five. There's a emoji and some emoji of a blocker. I don't know what that is. Anyway, Jorge says important to the One Piece story, but bad pacing keeps this arc from being the best in the series. I think that's Steven. That kind of
that's kind of right.
We
honestly thought like at the start, like, man, this is shaping up to be like the best or one of the best. It kind of fell a little bit along the way.
Kenshinaya or IME says better than the Fishman Island arc.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd agree.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Even though our opinions kind of
improved,
improved when we did the read through of it.
I think but that part in the middle of Fishman Island is still,
and also the villains are so lame.
That's true. The villains in this, even the worst of them, are better.
The racism allegory is it's all right. That's not my problem with it. As I tweeted at the time, Vanderdecken is the worst.
I think Fishman Island still. I mean, we'll see when we do the story arc rankings, and I really have to think about it more. Probably going to be toward the bottom, if not the bottom. Skills, or 91 Ryan says Gear 4 is amazing. Christopher Knutson said the length was taxing at times, but overall content and addition to the story was my favorite. Also love the battles. I think we all agree here. Brandon R. says it was a bit too long, but he liked it. I'm getting a sense of what the general consensus is. Milos, the creator, said too many subplots and a meandering midsection, but it has so many standout moments that I can't not enjoy it. I think that's what we were saying as well. Steven, not you, Steven 27916. I don't know what number you are, but I assume it's not that one.
I think he's number one.
I'm lower. Yeah, that's right.
The best, what's Steve then? The best villain, a beautiful city, amazing fights, Sabo, a new admiral, Gear 4, Baby 5 and Lao G, Coliseum, 2 perfect songs. I'm trying to think of what that's referring to. And it's amazing. Yeah, so I think that...
I don't know about best villain, but I do agree with a lot of that.
Yeah. I liked Doflamingo overall, but I did not like the Doflamingo family cast as much as the the side villains in some of the other arcs.
Yeah, like I think Thriller Bark was excellent with side villains.
Oh, I think Alabasta.
Not overall.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I don't know. Well, I don't think the side villains, aside from Mr. 2 and later on Mr. 1 and Mr. 3, I think there's influence.
You just named 3 of them.
No, there's influence on that from going down in
Pell
Down. I think.
No, I always really love Mr. 2, at least.
I think Thriller Bark doesn't actually. It's one of the minor things that Thriller Bark does really well is fleshing out its side villains, which is not.
Yeah. Well, and he also kept it limited. Like he concentrated the
Furious.
The characterization into a few characters rather than having so many like in this arc.
Well, look, you could say the Dressrosa side villains are bad, but they're not as bad as the Skypiea side villains, which are the worst side villains. You could say what you want about Skypiea. I'm pretty pro Skypiea, but I hate those side villains. No? No one? Oh.
No. I have to think. This is going to go back into the arc rankings where I'm trying to think of who's the side villains.
No, the side villains should not be the determining factor for your arc rankings.
As I said, it's a minor thing, but it's a minor thing that is done well in Thriller Bark.
Jeff, or Captain Bolton, says an overall good arc with amazing reveals and ramifications that will undoubtedly be better after a distance of a couple years. I think we could all agree with that.
Yeah.
Miyonomi says it's epic, especially that Sabu is back. I'm sorry, your spelling is funny of that. Is back with the awesome twist. The Mr. Cravat stuff was great.
Nobody was saying Sabu.
Nice.
I was gonna say I thought that was like the voodoo guy from Major League, but that was Jobu.
Bad luck.
The next one comes from what? Who's his Twitter handle Sakata Rosinante. A very long stepping stone to greater things. I think it goes to show here though that a lot of these Twitter handles are named after characters from Dressrosa. I don't know if this is a good random sample of One Piece fans, but and the thing is, think about this: if you started reading or watching One Piece in the last 2 to 3 years, it's been Dressrosa the whole time. You've started, even if you've been a fan for 3 years, which is a long time to be a fan.
It's the only weekly experience is this one arc.
And do you know what's crazy? I was thinking about this. The anime is going to have at least 100 episodes, I think it's safe to say, for the Dressrosa arc, or around 100. Think about the television shows that reach, the few television shows that reach 100 episodes. Dressrosa as its own series would have enough to get into syndication.
Wow.
And as a manga, how long was Bakuman? It wasn't much more than 10 volumes.
Bakuman was 20 volumes.
Oh, it was 20. Can you think of any like 10 volume series? Or no, how long was Death Note? Wasn't that close to?
Yeah, Death Note was 12.
So you could tell the whole story of Death Note, or you could read Dressrosa.
Yeah, Pluto was 8, I think.
Oh yeah, Pluto. Oh yeah, that is 8. I have it right here. But that's
I have 2 of those volumes. I promised to read them.
But the other thing with like Urasawa is you could read Pluto in around the time it takes to read maybe 2 Dressrosa volumes. And One Piece is fast, but Urasawa's fast. You read through those quick.
That's true.
Not that it's not a great experience and worth every moment and every cent. Anyway, Super Forsooth says a lot of cool moments and a lot of gripes. Had a great flashback though. Also Bartolomeo. We did kind of gloss over Bartolomeo a little bit, but not that much. I love him.
He's a great side character.
I think the characters we're getting out, in the future that we're going to get out of Dressrosa, worth the worst parts of this arc.
That's the thing. Like I said, the side villains may have been crappy, but the side other characters more than made up for it.
Our friend of the podcast, Amantano Art, said, sorry, I definitely butchered that. It was long, but heck, I love Dofi. Aaron says, our amazing bedhead. Oh, we have great Twitter handles this week. Pros, Cabbage, Bart, Gear 4, Cons, Rebecca. Half of my favorite characters were gone for most of it.
Oh, that's a legitimate gripe there.
Yeah, that's
true.
A really legitimate gripe, especially just having the time skip with the 2-year thing.
Mm-hmm. Again, I don't think he realized how long he was going to end up keeping them out of the story.
Justin has a theory. So if Sanji, this is I guess, but no, it doesn't really have to do with this. Let's see what else we got. We got some PieceTheDress with people actually using the hashtag. Thank you guys. Frank, Full Metal, friend of the podcast. Also, marathon reading the arc made me enjoy it more than I feel most people who read it weekly did. Great settings and good fights. To give you an idea, I think Frank was only caught up to the Toonami stuff, so NES Lobby, as recently as like maybe a year ago. And he caught up. He's all caught up listening to the show now, the full show. He used to just listen to the Toonami recaps.
Oh, wow.
So I guess I think that is an opinion I would take differently than everyone else's here.
Mm-hmm.
For example, Zoro's Pride, who is also a friend of the show, says long. That was his piece. He's not wrong. No. And finally, A Clone's Rose said, fatigued at the end, but accomplished a lot for the overall story of One Piece and will be viewed more favorably in retrospect. So it sounds like everyone I think we have a agreed opinion here that maybe when I don't know if we're actually going to, if we do another story arc ranking in the future in a couple years, it might be higher on that list. Which is why I think it's always, we did our last story arc ranking in 2012.
No, it was 2012 because it was my first summer during law school.
It was the 15th anniversary, the quindecennial. So now we're in the 18th anniversary. So 3 years ago, 3+ years ago. So I think doing it every 3 years is an appropriate amount because I think that gives us enough time to the arc that we most recently had done in the last one is now gone for a little while, and we're in and we've done at least one new one. Hopefully my prediction about the Zoe end date is wrong. All right, I think that's going to conclude us for today. Ed, I'm sorry, Stephen, where could the good people contact you?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at Translatosaurus. If you're not a subscriber to Shonen Jump, you think about that. It's only $25 a year for, let's see, what have we been getting? About 40 chapters of One Piece a year, would you say, with Oda's schedule?
Maybe more.
Yeah, so something around there.
It's not like he takes it seems like he takes a week off, or Jump has a week off
every 4 chapters. I think.
No, it seems like he every 4 to 8 chapters, he takes one off.
It depends. Yeah, but at any rate, you can follow along with us now that we are in a brand new arc, just getting started. So it's it's usually at least for me, it's always kind of the most exciting part of the arcs is the
beginning and
setup.
The end.
Yeah. You can check out my work there, or just keep picking up the volumes.
Ed, how could the good people out there contact us?
Well, Zach, you're Zach_Logan on Twitter. I am Edward E. Festicio on Twitter. The podcast is at OnePiecePodcast.com, Twitter.com, YouTube.com, and Facebook.com/OnePiecePodcast. OnePiecePodcast.tumblr.com for news updates and funny pictures. Reddit.com/r/OnePiecePodcast to interact or leave comments on episodes and stuff like that. OnePiecePodcast@gmail.com is our email address. One Piece Podcast is our Skype name. Subscribe on Stitcher, subscribe on SoundCloud, or subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. You can also call us on our phone number. Zach?
That phone number is 347-497-MAJI.
Maji.
That phone number again is 347-497-6254. Call anytime with your questions, your comments, your theories. This has been more fun than I thought it would be. I've been putting it off, if you couldn't tell. But this is going to be the end of the read through, I think, for a few years.
Also, you know what this means is that we have officially read every chapter of One Piece within like a 6-month span.
There we go. We did it, guys.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations for all you out there who read along with us. It's been an adventure. And I want to thank all of our guests who joined us for the OP read through. I'm looking forward to volume 15 of the read through in whatever year we get to do that for the Zo arc, and whatever comes after that, because there's a lot that we know is coming down the pike even at this point. But I hope you guys enjoy this adventure. Remember, you could pick up all the Viz volumes of One Piece in your local bookstore, on Amazon, or Right Stuff. You could also check out the digital volumes on Viz Media, which is what I used for the entirety. I actually went through the Shonen Jump ones once I got caught up. And it actually wasn't as terrible as I thought it would be to do that. But not fun, but not as bad as I thought it would be.
To be fair, that's kind of, if you were doing it in Japan, that's what it would be like. You know, if you're saving your Shonen Jumps for all the material that hasn't been collected in volume format, you have to go flip through the magazine to find one piece each time if you're going to read them in order.
But the difference is they look nice on digital, unlike how they look in that crappy print when you're in Japan. You can barely see what's happening sometimes. So I mean, we're blessed to be able to see it in such resolution.
Pretty sure that's post-consumer toilet paper recycled.
Single ply magazine.
So on that note, we're gonna end the One Piece read through. My name is Zach.
My name is Ed.
And my name is Steven.
We'll see you sometime, somewhere. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Together